Out of the gates and ready to go. Outkick 360 is underway. Glad you're with us from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hutton and Withrow here, you there, and a big Thursday show. Dane Bradshaw from the SEC Network. He will be on the call for the SEC tournament later this evening for the 2 games tonight on SEC Network. That will be coming your way in about 20 minutes. Plus, Armando Salguero and Trey Wallace of Outkick.com. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hutton. Fired up, ready
Tournament
for
time.
The start of the end of the week here on a Thursday.
The last time the SEC tournament was in Nashville, we were in a shutdown, right?
Has it been that long?
Yes. It was right before the COVID outbreak.
I feel like now the schedule is it's 4 out of 5 years it'll be in Nashville. They've gotten to a more regular schedule, maybe 3 out of 4, but they want Nashville to be the more permanent hub, but with the occasional exception. A year ago it was in Tampa.
That's right.
But, yeah.
And it's in full swing. Davey Hudson's going to be monitoring the scoreboards throughout today's show. Game 1 of today's slate in the SEC is nearing conclusion, at least in regulation. Plenty of games on the slate as well, Davey. What do you have?
Right now, the big game in the SEC, Mississippi State at Florida. I mean, this one comes down. Mississippi State on the bubble. Also, if they're up by 3 at the moment, if they're able to pull this one off, they will be facing off against Alabama.
Florida and Mississippi State tied at 57. Chad, your thoughts on the spread that you bet prior to tip-off?
Davey had the score right, by the way. As he was saying that, the 3 was in the air.
36 seconds to play.
And Florida buries a 3, 36 seconds left, 57-57. This would be great news for Vanderbilt with Mississippi State on the bubble, a team Vandy just beat without Liam Robbins at home. And this would put Mississippi State's NCAA tournament credentials on hold. I think this would be a big blow to Mississippi State. They have to win this game. They have to be playing this like they have to win this game. Tied with 36 seconds left. Florida without Colin Castleton, their best player.
Duke leads Pitt 24-13, and Ohio State early over Iowa also in the first half, 14-13 the score there. Chad, college basketball, we're not going to see an institution of the sport moving forward, and that's Jim Boeheim at Syracuse.
I will never be accused of being the biggest Jim Boeheim fan. Have not been throughout my lifetime. But the amazing thing about Jim Boeheim is I am 41 years old, and his head coaching career at Syracuse has lasted 6 years longer than my life. That's incredible.
It is. And
I respect it. I don't love the personality. Heck of a basketball coach, an institution. In the last few years, this is not an in memoriam. You know, a lot of these guys are still with us. But Roy Williams leaves coaching. Coach K leaves coaching. Jay Wright at Villanova leaves coaching. And now Jim Boeheim, forced out at Syracuse, certainly not retiring, based on him not having a quote in the team's official release. It's a blow to everyone who watches college basketball and remembers these guys from their childhood even. So I think there's something to be said about that and how we're sort of moving into a new era. Who is the Jim Boeheim now of college basketball? John Calipari? I'm trying to think about guys that are synonymous with the sport that have been coaching forever.
Tom Izzo is the longest tenured coach.
Tom Izzo's a good one.
He's the longest tenured coach in the country.
But those guys now are – that's the thing about college sports are a coach's sport. Yeah. College basketball especially, coach's sport. So that's something to keep in mind now is another legend of the game is stepping aside.
But when I see this, the quotes he's giving yesterday at the presser – and then the response from Syracuse, this needs to be better on the university's part, right? Just from an optics standpoint, right? You can tell he doesn't want to retire. It's obvious based on the quotes. It's a university decision. Ask them. I'm paraphrasing, but it doesn't make sense. And for a coach that's been there as long as he has, Chad's right, it's an institution. You have to be better than that on the final game if he's going out that way, considering what he's done. 5 Final Four appearances, I believe. 2 since we saw Carmelo in the Syracuse uniform. Chad, it's got to be better on the Q's part of this, not on Boeheim's part.
Well, I think both probably could be a little better, but certainly it's on Syracuse. Why do you have to release that statement?
But don't you
Just a little bit after the game?
at some point, don't you deserve in your career to go out the way you want to go out if you're going to retire? If you want to do one more year, what is that going to hurt Syracuse if they're promoting from within?
I'm sure there's been talk about this for a while, so Syracuse probably thought they were at an impasse.
Yeah.
And they just had to release it and say it.
And he's 78.
There's no rush.
I know. Yeah, exactly.
There's no coaching search. You're promoting Adrian Autry from within. So why not wait a month
It doesn't
and
need to
go
be the
back
presser
and forth
after the loss.
and
You're
say,
right.
Coach, you're a legend. Let's put your quote in there. You can support your guy who has supported you. Let's talk about this. Let's negotiate a buyout if that's what it's going to take. You can say retirement, and we'll still give you a buyout. Something other than this, which is what? Minutes after the game ends, they put this statement out, and Boeheim's not a part of it. That part of it is on the university. There was no rush. They could have waited to come to an agreement with Boeheim before making this announcement.
And based on his age, he's going to be asked about. He's been asked about this the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Right. He's 78. Of course, that's the obvious question.
They also haven't been very good lately.
Yeah, but
It's a big part of it.
another disappointing season. But when you put in totality what he means to the university, I don't let the coach go up there and act like, well, just ask the university what I'm going to do. Or I tried to do that last week and you guys didn't catch on. Like, it should not be that way. He deserves more than that compared to what we would say the average coach lifespan is what, 5 or 10 years? If you're good, then you're on to the next thing, the next challenge. You're at least accepting visits for an offer to go somewhere else. Boeheim hasn't done that.
Well, it's almost like
guy.
they scheduled a post on the official announcement and didn't keep in mind that, this guy's got a press conference after where he's going to say repeatedly, it's on the university. It's their decision now.
It's their choice what they want to do.
They could have, unscheduled that post and come back and said, let's talk to Coach and let's take a month and work this thing out where it's more amicable.
Yeah.
Instead, it's silence from Jim Boeheim.
Chad, we got Dane Bradshaw coming up. By the way, Mississippi State and Florida in overtime now, and State's up by 3, 60-57. We'll keep you updated in real time here from the Game 1 over at Bridgestone Arena here in Nashville for the SEC tournament. Tennessee and Ole Miss follows. Trey Wallace is there courtside. He'll join us in between games. And then at halftime, he'll check in for sure for Tennessee and Ole Miss. I'm hearing a lot about collusion and the fact that the NFL owners are not colluding together to keep Lamar Jackson from having a fully guaranteed contract like Deshaun Watson. Okay, I'm hearing a lot from the media. Not collusion. We're not seeing it. The deal for Deshaun Watson wasn't great. It doesn't mean the owners are colluding. Take a step back and think to yourself, with your favorite team, your team is not picking up the phone, trying to negotiate with Lamar Jackson compared to the quarterback you have. And if you're a fan of 25 teams not in the playoffs on a routine basis, you have to be asking yourself why. That's my point from yesterday compared to the fully guaranteed deal. The teams rushed in to tell anyone that would call them, and I believe the reports, the Falcons are not interested. The Panthers are not interested. The Dolphins, Commanders, plenty of others. And you think, why wouldn't you at least get involved in negotiations for a quarterback that's way better than the one you have? A quarterback that has a better passer rating from in the pocket than the top QBs in the league. Last year, when he played, he was 8-4 as a starter for Baltimore. Former league MVP and dynamic, athletic. The locker room absolutely loves him. You can tell that based on the games he didn't play in December in Baltimore. Chad, I don't understand why more teams aren't just staying quiet on this for the obvious connections they would have for bringing him in the cap space, instead of saying, yeah, we're not in the Lamar Jackson negotiation. This is not about the fully guaranteed deal, for me at least. I'm surprised there are not more teams staying back and saying, hey, let's pick up the phone and call. And they still could. They still could get involved with all this. But I was within, an hour and a half, we had 5 teams, the obvious ones, that said, yeah, we're not going to negotiate with him.
I think it's just so difficult to prove collusion.
Well, It is.
Whether we're going to say it is or not, it's almost impossible to prove.
I think the teams also know the Ravens are going to match the best offer, and the best offer is not going to be fully guaranteed. So I think these teams just
know. The issue is they know what the Ravens know about what Lamar Jackson wants.
We all do.
So if the starting point and the end point is fully guaranteed contract on par with Deshaun Watson,
right?
They're not going to talk to him. So I understand that because no one wants to do that because they want the Browns deal to be the only one.
But within an hour of it being legal to talk to him, they were telling reporters we're not interested.
For optics purposes of a possible lawsuit collusion, he needs to go negotiate with some teams. I'm with you on that.
It's very
Someone
surprising.
needs to at least act like they're negotiating in good faith with Lamar Jackson.
Well, and there are other teams
he can't
that could.
get shut out. I mean,
other
someone's going to talk to him.
But the Ravens basically said, hey, go about this. You know, you're wide open here. We have the chance to match, but we don't think you're going to get the fully guaranteed deal. There is a lot of wiggle room in between what the Ravens offered. 130+ million guaranteed was the reported final offer last August, to where it reaches the Watson level, which is 250 fully guaranteed. Based on reports, the Ravens offer is $100 million off where Lamar Jackson wants to be. If another team comes in, they don't have to be Jimmy Haslam. But if they come in and say, we're $50 million better than your final offer, and he takes it, why wouldn't you take that opportunity to figure out if you can get a dynamic quarterback on your roster? I don't understand that.
I'm with you.
For a league that says we do everything possible, we turn over every stone to find talent, you have the opportunity, which you don't get in a typical offseason, with a non-exclusive franchise tag on a QB that has been there and done that at the highest level for his position. He's won the MVP.
The only thing that supersedes wins in the NFL is money. That's it. That's the only thing. And this is all about the league's money.
How do you make more money? You have the quarterback.
I am telling you, though, the rest of the league is sitting there saying this is bad for everyone. They hate Jimmy Haslam. No one owner wants to be that guy who becomes the other one that hurts the league's pockets.
You know where I'm going here, though. If Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow, we can go down the list. If they are available on a non-exclusive franchise tag, what's the phones like for the agent?
Yeah.
This is where I think Lamar needs an agent, by the way.
But again, if everyone says you're not getting the Deshaun Watson fully guaranteed contract, they're not getting the Deshaun Watson fully guaranteed contract because there's no other league to go to.
But that's not
the Live Tour doesn't exist for football.
That's not the report. The report is the Falcons aren't interested in Lamar Jackson. It's not that they're not interested in giving him fully guaranteed. And by the way, the Falcons were one of the finalists, quote unquote finalists, for Deshaun Watson.
But why do you think they're not interested in him?
They don't want to give him the Deshaun Watson contract.
Yeah, and these reporters that are making these reports, they're talking to teams. Well, so they're not going to come out and say all of these teams are out on Lamar Jackson because they don't want to give him a fully guaranteed contract, even though we know that.
But you don't go out. I don't tap out on the fully guaranteed. I don't know what Lamar Jackson's willing to take. He's just not going to take $135 million guaranteed, where he sees Watson getting $250. There's a big gap between that number. That's my point with all this.
Yeah,
and he also knows what Burrow and Herbert are about to command.
It's weird. I think I'd hire an agent if I were him.
This is where he needs.
I mean, this would be the point where I'm thinking this isn't going well right now. Maybe I should hire an agent.
But he needs an agent to get his message across, right? Like
or he needs an advisor that can talk to reporters and get his message out.
Well, right, because the message.
I could text a reporter if I'm him and say, "Here's what's going on," anonymously, right?
Yeah,
someone should do that.
When you see reports on him or the Baltimore Ravens, it's coming through the team. It's not coming through him. We haven't heard anything about this negotiation until now, and all we've heard is the Ravens are 200% sure that he's back. Well, the only way they know that, they're going to match any offer that anyone brings, and if not, they're getting 2 first-round picks. That's a steep price. We've only seen that happen one time in 30 years. Pointed this out yesterday. But also keep in mind, we haven't seen a quarterback like this. And we saw the Browns give up 3 first-round picks to the Texans, plus second and third-round picks, in exchange for a fully guaranteed deal with Deshaun Watson. So when you think about the price tag, I would not be saying to any reporter, yeah, our organization's out of here. We're not interested. Desmond Ridder or Lamar Jackson? Really? For Arthur Smith's offense? Sign me up for it. It's worth 2 first-round picks, and it's worth $200 million instead of $250. I don't know what the number would be, but Lamar's going to take more than whatever he's been offered from Baltimore.
Well, if everyone in the league is saying, we're not going to do what the Browns did, in that contract,
then that's collusion.
Then, yeah, it's collusion. But also, then why wouldn't you just meet with Lamar Jackson if he's an upgrade and tell him what you're going to do? And then when Lamar Jackson goes to 7 different teams and they're all saying, what that is not the league. That is an idiot owner. Here's what your value is. Here's what we're willing to offer. If he got consistent messaging from every team, they can't prove collusion with that. That's just what the market's been before this just ungodly contract for a guy who had charges of molesting masseuses for the Browns. I mean, that's what I'm saying if I'm the other team, right?
It's like, on 20 of them. It was suspended for 12 weeks.
Yeah, we're not going to do that.
Still got it.
The one is not the whole. Look at other contracts recently. That's what you're more in line with. Here's what we're willing to do. But I'm with you on
the quarterback is not every other position
either. It's counterproductive to not negotiate with him.
I
agree with you on that.
That's what's weird about it.
But that's where I feel like you could get the message across to Lamar Jackson, agentless Lamar Jackson, by doing that and having all the teams tell him that.
Geno Smith is getting $53 million in 2023 with Seattle. I'll just leave it at that. That's where Lamar Jackson is saying, hey, long-term contract, compared, here we go. And we have so many teams saying, yeah, we're not interested. Maybe they're lying. We've seen that happen before. It'll happen again. It's happening now. But I would, if I'm an organization, I'm not saying one way or the other what's up. And I'm trying to get in touch with him to see what he wants.
Yeah.
What the bottom line is.
It's counterproductive to not talk to him.
Coming up, we switch gears. We talk hoops. Dane Bradshaw joins us in studio, the former Vol. He'll be on the call tonight for the SEC tournament in Nashville. He's in studio next on Outkick 360.
Does it feel like every single year, it feels like we start things off earlier than the year before? Like it blew my mind. Like I was scrolling through social media like last week or the week before last, and you got Vanderbilt rolling, you got Florida going, Kentucky's now going, but then you got some schools that are holding off, till the middle of March, to start spring practice. Before you know it, Mike, like the national championship's going to end, and 2 weeks later they're going to start spring practice. It's getting crazy, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I thought coaches had a little bit more control over when these things started, but I guess not always the case. And I'll give you an example, Trey. I heard Hugh Freeze was kind of upset that they started so early. They started last week. And not that he didn't want to go to camp, but he has just been on the ground running since day one. He's not had time to get away. He wanted a little bit of a break, but hey, that's life in the SEC. You got to do it when you got to do it. And another little anecdote, one of my buddies covers the Florida Gators. So he took off the week prior to spring practice. He thought it was the perfect time just to recharge for fall camp. And what do you know? 3 coaches exit for the NFL. I mean, that was the worst time to take a vacation, but that's life in the SEC.
And it looks like Florida's shoring up the tight end spot, position. And we get to this point where, some guys are on breaks right now. Some coaches are. They take this final week. They want to dip off. They're going to spend time with the family because, from next week until July, they don't get a break. And I'm interested. That's one thing I wanted to ask you about when it comes to college football and where we are at right now. I had this conversation. I was talking with former Tennessee assistant T. Martin, talking with a couple other assistant coaches about this with the recruiting calendar. How much change, in your opinion, have we seen? Because I have my thoughts, but I want your thoughts on how much change we've seen when it comes to the recruiting calendar when you add in the transfer portal and you're adding NIL to the conversation. Like Mike, like these jobs for these coaches have changed in the last 2 years. It's been more added to it. And yeah, they make money. They make good money in the Power 5 level, but job titles aren't the same anymore, brother.
No, and you're seeing it more and more. I mean, the NFL has always been an intriguing option for a lot of these coaches, but it was pretty stunning when a guy like Steve Spurrier made that jump to the NFL. Now, it seems like all these coaches, the first chance they get, it don't matter where it is or what the position is. Hey, I'm going to the NFL because I don't want to have to deal with all this other BS. Like you said, the recruiting, the NIL, the transfer portal, and not only having to deal with all that, but having to deal with all of that essentially in the same period. I mean, it's just incredibly wild. I think they really screwed up with this early high school signing period. It doesn't make any sense now. And now that we got the expanded college football playoff coming right around the corner, I mean, we are going to have what is essentially now the signing day, the national signing day, the week of the college football playoff. So how locked in can Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, and them be for recruiting when they will likely have a game in about 3 days to prepare for that is going to determine how successful their season is? I mean, something has to be done. It's hard for me to feel too bad, Trey, for some of these guys making $10, $11 million, but they're at the high bar. I mean, most of the assistants are doing all the work and they're not getting paid near as much. So yeah, I mean, we're just going to keep losing more and more quality coaches to do other things because we're just putting too much on these guys.
Coming up, we'll have scores and updates for you from Bridgestone Arena at the SEC Tournament, plus across the country. Outkick 360 rolls on across the Outkick Network. Hutton and Withrow with you, live from 6th and Peabody. With Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Chad, we have a friend of the show in town for the SEC Tournament, for the SEC Network, and before he heads over to Bridgestone Arena for the evening sessions, he's joining us in studio.
Great friend of the show, Dane Bradshaw, SEC Network, also award-winning fifth-grade basketball coach.
Yes.
A man of many talents in studio with us with the coverage with ESPN SEC Network this week with the SEC Tournament. Dane, welcome in, man.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, that third-place trophy out of 6 teams in the fifth-grade league is something I hold near and dear to my heart.
It sits with
no
you.
Contract extension earned this year.
And the losses stay with you, don't they? As a coach, they always stay with you.
Would you have accepted the 6th place trophy?
Yeah, I would have. Because, you got to suck it up and get in the handshake line and all that.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You have a really good game tonight. 2 of them could be very good, but Auburn-Arkansas, to me, is maybe the best matchup.
Yeah.
Just on paper in this tournament in the early going. 2 teams you've had this year. So what do you think about these 2 teams and the state of them coming into this game?
Well, first, the fact that SEC play was so competitive that you've got 2 bona fide NCAA tournament teams as a 7 and 10 seed in the SEC tournament. And so that goes to show you the parity across the league. And Arkansas, to me, outside of Vanderbilt's chase for an NCAA tournament bid, Arkansas is the most interesting story of this tournament because they have Nick Smith Jr. back. They bona fide 5-star freshman he didn't start the season where he was out with a knee injury, came back, then he was out. People thought maybe he wouldn't even come back and rejoin the team at all because he's a future lottery pick. He comes back mid-February, and they've had some growing pains inserting him to the lineup. But on paper, they've got as high of a ceiling as anybody in the SEC. Now, can they click at the right time? Because time is starting to run out. But, man, you think about their backcourt with another freshman, Anthony Black, with Nick Smith Jr., as I mentioned, Ricky Council. The fourth is a 15 to 18-point scorer for you. They're not great on the interior, but, man, when you talk about March and guard play, they've got a big-time ceiling, even more so than Auburn. However, Auburn has kind of had a more consistent lineup the whole year. They're more veteran group, and those guys have a chip on the shoulder. Even Wendell Green, the guard for Auburn, was still talking about last year when Arkansas beat Auburn to knock Auburn off of their number one seed in the country, and there was the court storming and all that, and so it's got a little bit of an edge and rivalry to it.
Vandy LSU in the nightcap. You'll be on the call for that one. Vandy's won 8 of their last 9. Their lone loss at LSU, who finished dead last in the SEC. What is it about LSU that makes it a difficult matchup for Vandy, or was that sort of an outlier type game where Vanderbilt lost in Baton Rouge just a little while back?
Yeah. I would say an outlier, and if Vanderbilt had to do that game over again, I think they would have changed their coverage. KJ Williams is the one bright spot individually for LSU. He's a pick and pop, spread the court 5-man, and he had 35 points, I believe, 5 of 10 from 3 in that first matchup. And when they had Liam Robbins, I never want to say Vanderbilt's better without Liam Robbins. That's far from the truth. But when Liam Robbins was in that game, they used Liam Robbins in this what we call drop coverage. He kind of sagged in the paint, and they didn't guard that as well. Now with a smaller lineup, they're going to get out and chase the big man off the three-point line and say, by God, LSU is not going to beat us from 3. That's the only way they can win, and that's how they did win. And so I would expect a much more aggressive defensive coverage there. And if they do that, I think Vanderbilt is clearly the better team. And my hat's off to Jerry Stackhouse and that team. I mean, this was a team that used to find ways to lose. Now they're finding ways to win. And I've been on both sides of that huddle, man. You were in a huddle where you're like, here we go again. Even when the game's not over, you can just feel it, as opposed to when you're a winning team, you're like, it's cool, we got this. And I think that's what Vanderbilt has right now.
When you look at Tennessee right now, Dane, I think it's easy to say the Arkansas game is the formula without Zakai Ziegler in the lineup. How they played that game, how Vescovy ran point at times, how they ran point guard by committee. And I think for a large portion of the Auburn game, you can say, okay, that's the formula too for this team to have success, even on the road where they had a chance to win that game. How realistic is that for Tennessee to consistently play that way, to win games, not just in this tournament, but in the big tournament next week?
I'm in favor of Vescovy being off the ball for a huge majority of the game and not bringing the ball up the court. He doesn't have blow-by speed. So when you pressure him full court, I think it's exhausting for him just to get it up to half court and initiate the offense. So now you've got him doing that. And then be your best screener, your best cutter, your best shooter, your best playmaker. I just think you don't have to have him bring the ball up the court. You can get Meshack to do that. Tyreek Key can do that. Josiah Jordan-James. Have somebody else. Because think about how much energy it takes to bring that ball up the court as opposed to a 2 or 3 man on the wing that kind of jog up the court and get to their spot, right? I mean, they get to almost have a breather for 6 or 7 seconds while the point guard's working it up the court. And so, I think by committee they can do that. I don't know that Tennessee is a top 16 team in the country, but I still think they can make the Sweet 16 because of the way they're going to be rewarded for their body of work. If they can hang on, get a 3 seed, now you've got to beat a 14 and then either a 6 or 11. I think they can do that. And then from there, you say, hey, look, it's been a roller coaster season, but here we are in the Sweet 16, and anything can happen from there. So I'm still bullish on their chances to get there. Obviously, their ceiling is lower without Zakai Ziegler.
Dane Bradshaw in studio with us from the SEC Network. Will be on the call tonight for the evening session of the SEC tournament. The Blue Bloods are really forgotten this season in a weird way from the top 25. From the Kentucky perspective, what should we expect from the Wildcats in this tournament and moving forward?
Yeah, these guys were left for dead. I give them a lot of credit. After that loss to South Carolina at home, and then they bounced back and beat Kentucky on the road. And it's just been one of those things where whether it's an injury or their bad defense or their bad offense, as soon as they plug one hole and it's like, all right, we fixed our ball screen defense, Then next thing you know, they've got an injury to point guard over here, and you're like, all right, now we got to fill that up. All right, now Xavier Wheeler, is he even coming back this season? Who's going to play backup point guard? Then, so it's just been a roller coaster ride. But there was a lot of narrative of Calipari's lost his locker room. How can they even talk about him for the Texas job when they're not even going to make the NCAA tournament? And they've weathered the storm, and they never went on one of those really long losing streaks. It wasn't always aesthetically pleasing, but they've got themselves in a position to make a run. And if I'm a Kentucky fan, it's like, look, I can understand why you still have concerns. Like, hey, we should be more dominant than we are because we have such a high standard at Kentucky. But for now, just enjoy this team that hasn't quit and embrace the fact that this isn't a team that you should be that frustrated with in terms of we have more talent than everybody. Why aren't we reaching our potential? You really don't. They're not out-talenting people. To keep winning, they have to out-tough and they have to out-smart, which was a challenge for them to do too, but they're starting to do that.
So is Calipari coaching this team differently than previous years? You say they're not out-talenting people. That's very unusual for a Calipari team.
Yeah, I think so in terms of he's probably had to be a lot more patient on the defensive end because Oscar Tshiebwe, you're better with him on the court offensively. But, man, he was a defensive liability. Just teams were abusing him in ball screen coverage, then off the ball. So they did change some things with their coverage, and they've adapted. And even Antonio Reeves, their best scorer, like that guy's not going to be on anybody's all-defense team. It's not lack of effort. It's just, man, that's not his strength. And so I think continuing to try to figure out, all right, how do we kind of try to hide our weaknesses, expose our strengths, whereas when you have those All-Americans all over the place and John Walls and you got that great athleticism where you're like, yeah, I know we just got beat on a backdoor cut, but at least we had a 7-footer with a 46-inch vertical come over and clean that up. Like then people aren't complaining about your defense, right? Because you got a block at the end of the day. And so he just hadn't had that luxury this year.
Dane, let's talk coaching. So Jerry Stackhouse has done an amazing job. I was surprised to see a co-SEC Coach of the Year scenario that did not feature Dennis Gates at Missouri. For what he inherited, for the transfers he brought in, completely scrapped almost everything. Kobe Brown, a great guy coming back. But to have this team securely in the tournament in year one is a remarkable job for him. Were you surprised that he wasn't SEC Co-Coach of the Year?
A little bit. No complaints with who they did select.
Buzz Williams, absolutely.
I do think that at times, I don't have any proof of this, but for the coaches poll, I think sometimes coaches say, hey, we know Dennis Gates is probably going to get some national awards and other awards from the AP to where it's like, hey, for a tiebreaker, maybe give somebody else who should be in that conversation too. It's just a little bit of part of that coach's fraternity. By no means am I saying it's some charitable vote. But I do think at times maybe the coaches say it's not a slight on Dennis Gates. It's because of a point you just made, like, hey, Dennis Gates is going to get his. Let's make sure Jerry Stackhouse gets his too, because us as coaches know what a heck of a job he did. Even when they weren't winning as many games, every coach, not even in the media, but behind the scenes at shoot-arounds, are like, hey, that dude can coach some ball. He runs some really difficult stuff.
What do you make of the way Alabama has handled the Brandon Miller situation since you last joined us, which is 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And from then to now, and Miller spoke, but he's not going to speak again. He says, headed to the tournament, they're going to get the questions. They've handled it well to this point, and now tournament play comes.
Yeah, I think even if you would ask them, in hindsight, they wish they would have done some things better, right? I think that's something, no matter what side of the argument you're on, like, yes, this whole thing could have been done better. And I think both sides would agree.
And they also
that.
Admittedly, Dane, said, we didn't know about the text.
Yeah.
Right until the court proceeding happened. They said that's one fact that we weren't told.
Right.
That we didn't know that he got a text to bring a gun back at that point. So,
and look,
that was a surprise to them, I'm saying.
Yeah, here's a couple things that I might be in the minority on, and I certainly understand the other side of it. But when somebody says, hey, all Alabama and Nate Oates cares about is winning, I think that's completely false. I think there is a parental component to this, an emotional side of, I know this kid, I'm going to have his back, we are going to protect this player. Whether you agree with that or not, I just don't think their number one priority is about winning. This isn't a coach that has to prove himself or get to a Final Four to save his job. I don't buy that. And, you know, there's also folks that say, well, if this was an 8th or 9th man on the team, they would have kicked him off. You might be right. I'm not saying that that would definitely not happen either. But an 8th or 9th man could also, that kid's future, he could go in the transfer portal and probably hide under the radar and go play for another team next year if nothing new came out, right? Whereas Brandon Miller, it is a different animal, not just because what he can do for your team, but that kid's future of going to the NBA, lottery pick, generational change for your family, all those things that I do think that a coach, when they put kind of their parent hat on with the player, it can change it a little bit as opposed to just somebody separated from the program that's like, oh, you can't tell me that's not a violation of team rules. He gone. I just think it gets a little bit more complicated when you're closer to the situation.
What would a 10-game suspension have done?
Yeah.
That wouldn't have ruined his NBA eligibility.
No.
He wouldn't have been kicked off the team. And Alabama could have said, hey, we're doing the right thing. We're taking this seriously. And this is something that needed to be done. And you get Brandon Miller back in time for, the stretch run for March Madness and everything else. And I do think, Dane, if they did that, people like me or others that have been critical of them would not be critical at that point. Because, hey, they acted. They kicked the guy who may have murdered off the team.
Less
and then
critical.
they suspended the other guy.
Because I agree. Look, in hindsight, too, I would have liked to think, if I was in that position, it's like, hey, out of an abundance of caution, anybody that was in that vicinity, we're going to suspend for a few games, cooperate with the police. The report comes out. He's just a witness. Hey, we've already handled it. But when that text and that detail comes out, oh, boy, you're still getting some big-time scrutiny, but maybe it's a little bit less and the story isn't getting bigger and bigger throughout the season. And so that is something I think. But to just suspend them after the fact and all those things, then it looks like they're hanging the kid out to dry. And, it's a difficult one where I do think, and some folks have said, look, Nick Saban, if this would have happened, he wouldn't have stood for it. I can't speak for Nick Saban, but I'm telling you, you can't tell me if Nick Saban thought that this was being so damaging for the university and all these, he can't call the chancellor and say, hey, guys, y'all do something over there because I don't like the way our image is. But he's about second chances and standing by the kid. And think about this. If I'm an assistant coach for Alabama, I'm not telling you to agree with this. If I'm an assistant coach for Alabama and I'm recruiting somebody right now, I'm saying, hey, our head coach is willing to get run over, his reputation, people taking shots at him to defend the kid. That's kind of what you're selling mom and dad on. And if I'm recruiting against him, I'm saying, here's a team who's involved in a murder. You don't want your kid going there. I mean, that's what he's going to have to face also. And I will say, I think, and I understand your points completely, Dane. I think when they got the new information about the text in that court proceeding, Greg Burns said we didn't have that info on the College Game Day podcast.
Yeah, he said he didn't know about it.
To me, that was the opportunity to say, we're going to sit him for 4 games for the final 2 weeks of the regular season. At least then you can say you did something.
Would you? I don't totally disagree with that. The one thing
that would have been
I'm
their
starting
out
to
do
see
that with the new info.
And again, because it's look, again, it's a tragedy. I'm not trying to make anything light of it, but it's been fascinating to me here. I've listened to more podcasts, gotten more perspective of different opinions on this story than I can think of any story, just because I'm fascinated by hearing all those sides. And when I'm at shoot-arounds, I'm asking folks in radio, play-by-play, all this stuff. It doesn't seem like a lot of people want him kicked off the team necessarily. But I do think a lot of folks say, hey, something should have been done there. And I think Gary Parrish has done a nice job doing this, documenting this as well, saying, hey, look, that's got to be a violation of team rules somewhere. And look, but, they're doubling down. And I will say it seems they haven't been playing their best basketball necessarily, but it seems like they've stuck together through this. I do think this is really important, though, that the other guys on the team got to show a lot of character, too, because there are some guys, we've all had some bad teammates. If they see this window of opportunity, they're like, I'm not going to any class. I dare you to suspend me, right? So you can't have anybody trying to leverage this situation. And so that's where your leadership and your locker room really have to come together. And so far, it seems like they have.
When the incident went down with Chris Beard, we had the conversation that day. And that day I said, this dude will get a good job at a Power 5 school at some point. I'm a little surprised it's the very next season. I thought he might have to serve a 1-year hiatus and then Louisville or another job would come open because we know the dude can coach basketball. There's no doubt about it. What do you think, Dane, about the possibility now of Chris Beard at Ole Miss? Ole Miss is a tough place to win. And this is a guy from a basketball perspective that he can win at tough places to win.
And when you're a school that is looked at as, bottom maybe 3-4 job in the league, if you want a big name, you typically got to get a big name with some extra baggage. If you don't want that, that's okay. Guys like Dusty May, very qualified candidates out there, you can go that route too. And so that's where the athletic department's got to make a decision. But I thought too, like somebody like Chris Beard, it's like, all right, could you not wait a year and see what else opens up? Like if the Chargers drop, there's more than just one athletic department in the country that's willing to take a chance, give him a second chance type opportunity. But he was fired for cause at Texas. And he's not getting a paycheck from what I understand right now. So there is a component there of like, hey, I want to get employed sooner rather than later because I don't like my chances of going through litigation with the State University of Texas. So I was fired for cause. I'm not going to fight it. Let me go make $4 million a year. I'm employed and I'm in the SEC and I can get my revenge on my old school when they join.
Do you mean to tell me that Iona wouldn't have a good shot at hiring Rick Pitino if there wasn't some problems with Rick Pitino in the past? I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Shocked to hear this.
What's the backlash going to be like, though, for him? Anything? It doesn't sound like it, honestly.
No, I think there's always going to be an elephant in the room there. Charges were dropped.
Right.
Don't know what you don't know type thing, but you got to make assumptions. So, it's a weird dynamic, but he's not the first and won't be the last coach to get a second chance based on his talent. Same way with NFL players and NBA players. If you are good enough and you are worth the risk, people will give you a second chance. And it's not because they believe in second chances so much. It's because they want to be competitive and win.
Yeah, you don't win.
Because it's not about like saving and charitable acts. If that's the case, go get one of the, a mediocre coach that made the same mistake and hire them. No, it's about justifying it because you want to be competitive.
Dane, what do you think about this? I only think that it gets blowback if and when they're good. And what I mean by that is this Alabama thing wouldn't be talked about nearly as much if they weren't a possible number 1 overall seed and a team to win. If they weren't going to the NCAA tournament
with the best player,
it wouldn't be talking. That's just reality, right? So if he comes in at Ole Miss and they're not very good in year 1, I don't think anyone's going to talk about it. But I think if he goes in and by year 1 or year 2 they're a tournament team and he's getting top recruits, there's probably more things written about it. Do you think that's fair? Or do you think that'll happen?
No, I think so. It'll be because if he has that quick of success, the story and the content is still fresher on people's minds. To your point, there's going to be more criticism. If we're here a year later and he is the coach of Ole Miss and they are getting a double bye in the SEC tournament and you have all this media attention, there's going to be some articles that are like, I can't believe we're covering a guy who less than 14 months ago did this. However, if he has that success in year 3, there's probably going to be an article or two, but maybe not as fresh. So I tend to agree with you. And they know what they're signing up for, and they know that criticism is going to be there. But that's the risk they're willing to take.
Dane Bradshaw with us. Finally, Dane, look, you can win your way into the tournament right now, right? How much can you actually improve your seeding from the committee standpoint? Do you feel like, based on what happens this weekend? Because last year, it just seemed like the bracket was already set.
Yeah, it seems like we've been a little bit fooled. I don't say that by the committee, but get our hopes up to a degree. Texas A&M made it to the SEC title game, but it seemed like they had already, if they didn't win it, that the decision had already been made for them not to be in.
Yeah.
I do think a team like Vanderbilt that has these quad 1 opportunities, if they can win against LSU, they would play Kentucky, and then you have an opportunity to maybe influence that bracket before they have everything set.
Do you think Vandy's in if they beat Kentucky? That seems to me like that's the line of demarcation.
I'm not falling for that.
Beat Kentucky or beat A&M. Beat A&M, I think they're definitely in. But are they in if they beat Kentucky for a second time?
I think they should be.
Yeah.
I think they should be, and we're going to do some blind resume stuff tonight. I think that, so I really do. I think they should be, but I'm going to go off of our expert Joe Lunardi, who knows it better than I do. The thing is, if they beat Kentucky and then they lose their next game, let's say at that point they're sitting on the last 4 in. Man, these bid stealers, they come and gobble you up where you have these 1-bid leagues that you think are going to be 1 bid. And that, like a College or Charleston. Now, bad example because they actually won their conference tournament. But College or Charleston had 30 wins. They played good enough to get an at-large bid in the tournament. However, if they finish second in their tournament, all of a sudden that person that conference becomes a 2-bid league that you weren't thinking would be, and then bye-bye Vanderbilt or whoever it might be. And so, you get really worried about those bid stealers and playing on the bubble. But I really do. I think Vanderbilt deserves it. I think they're and they have a chance to redeem that bad loss. Not that the bad loss is the loss or the win against LSU, if they get it tonight, doesn't completely make up for the bad loss resume standpoint. But then they've won 9 out of 10, and who can say that since February 1st? Only a couple teams, UCLA and I forget the other.
Dane Bradshaw, you do a great job on SEC Network, man. Thank you so much for the time today, walking down the street, joining us here at 6th and Peabody, and we've got your hookup on Moonshine and Yeehaw anytime.
Appreciate it. Maybe not before tip, but hit me
after the game.
Enjoyed the banter and respectful dialogue.
We'll be around.
Polish off the coaching resume. You don't have to polish off the broadcast resume. You're doing a great job there, but freshen up the coaching resume just in case you're replaced with that 5th grade team.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I'm on the hot seat as it is.
Dave Bradshaw has been our guest. Stay tuned. More coming here at 6th and Peabody. Outkick 360 on the Outkick Network.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into Outkick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
So the higher that number can be, the better you are with the committee. It's really that simple.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
He's got incredible taste in which media figures he listens to.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
Why are we going through Melania's goods? Don't make Brittany Griner out to be some type freedom fighter. Shouldn't there be a little bit of common sense? Let's roll them, big boy. What do you got?
They want to find someone to be the face of domestic terrorism, and they want it to be a right-wing Trump supporter. Don't let them entrap you into doing something dumb. But they were hyper-rational. They looked at the data, and they said it makes no sense for me to submit to this COVID shot mandate.
Get the shot or you can't go to your brother's wedding. Get the shot or you can't go to your daughter's graduation. Get the shot or else.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, the bold taste of a Southern legend.
Ole Miss and Tennessee just underway for the SEC tournament. Game 2 on this Thursday. Outkick 360 rolls on. Chad, your thoughts on the Vols and their chances today?
Yeah, they should win. I mean, they're better. They're better than Ole Miss. I still don't know what Tennessee is without Zakai Ziegler. I think it's very undecided. They had the one game where he goes down, 17 minutes left in the first half, looked great against Arkansas, looked pretty good at times against Auburn, and then they couldn't score a bucket for the last 7 minutes of the game and lose by 9. So they're still feeling their way out of what they're going to look like without their star point guard.
So they're the 5th seed in the SEC tournament. What seed are they right now in the NCAA?
I think they're probably
as of today,
low-end 3 seed. I think they lose today. They're 4 at best, maybe a 5. I think they win today. They're probably getting more secure as a 3 seed.
They win today, and then they're slotted
well,
no matter what happens.
The key is just avoiding the bad loss.
Right.
Tennessee does not have a quad 3 or quad 4 loss in the season. I don't know what Ole Miss is. I'm guessing this would be a quad 3 or quad 4 loss, and it would come in their last game, their last game leading into the tournament.
We have a full scoreboard coming your way in about 7 minutes here on Outkick 360 across the Outkick network. Chad, so we've seen plenty of fast food restaurant fights.
Yes.
There's a new one. Taco Bell. The Crunch Wrap Supreme.
Which is delicious.
Taco Bell ran out of the Crunch Wrap Supreme. And 2 girls, 1 guy. The guy is behind the register. And decides, after being shoved and slapped or whatever by the patrons that are upset that the Crunch Wrap Supreme is out, he decides to shove the women that are paying customers at Taco Bell. And then a bystander jumps in, another guy, and gets just clocked by the guy behind the register over a Crunch Wrap Supreme. Your thoughts?
Hutton, this is a very loose
This is not a Mexican pizza.
This is a very loose use of the term patrons. When I think patrons, I think those at Augusta National taking in the Masters with a nice cold Amstel Light and maybe a pimento cheese or egg salad sandwich. I don't think, the people fighting over the Crunch Wrap Supreme at Taco Bell as patrons. So I think it's a very liberal use of the term patrons by you.
Fair enough.
I don't know that I've ever thought so highly of a fast food item that I'd come to blows over it. So not for me. And I like I'm not anti-fast food. There's plenty of fast food that I love. I don't think I'd ever get this worked up over it.
I've never been to a fast food restaurant that is serving soft serve ice cream, by the way. The machine is always broken. Or they're cleaning the machine for tomorrow. Never had it.
I'm always surprised when they have it.
I've never been to one that has it. I promise you.
I was at a McDonald's recently with my girls, and we got ice cream, and I had it.
Like 11 o'clock in the morning?
I was like, oh, the ice. And when I said yes, I was shocked that they had it there, that it wasn't broken. It's amazing.
Here he is. We found the one.
It was it.
Armando Salguero joins us in 25 minutes. All of the NFL headlines when we come back. A full NCAA tournament scoreboard for you from the conferences. Plus, Tiger Woods' ex-girlfriend wants $30 million because she was tricked. That's next on Outkick 360.
There's a bunch of teams this year that are entering the season with a closer by committee. What are your thoughts on closer by committee versus having a main closer?
In 2 words, it's ass. Here's the problem. This is where sabermetrics and baseball clash, and the sabermetric guys don't understand why the baseball guys can't just get it. When the sabermetric guys look at a bullpen, they look at a list of data, right? First pitch strikes, who gets the first hitter out, which is the big hitter for the reliever, more than the other guys. Walks, your whip, how you hold runners, all these other things. The problem is that none of those factors account for the inning in which that happens. And unfortunately for sabermetric guys, pitchers think differently in the 9th inning than they do in the 8th, than they do in the 7th, than they do in the 6th. It's just human nature. Because everybody in the 9th inning hitting in a game that's close is hitting with the mentality of the tying runs on third, I need to get him in or get on base. That's a different mental approach than they take for their other at-bats during the game, for the most part. pitchers have to change and elevate in the ninth inning their mental approach to pitching, and some guys just can't do it. It's just not. I mean, I can remember. I think it was in my career, 2003. The Red Sox went with the closer by committee to open the season, and they had a great bullpen. Turned out to be a disaster. It doesn't work. So in spring training, you go through a couple stages. You go from the young guy whose mental approach to every day in camp is, my God, I want to make the team. There's the younger guy whose mental approach is, I just want them to remember me. To the guy who's kind of established, to the guy who knows he's going to be pitching opening day and shows up at spring training as your ace and is getting ready. And those guys, those veteran guys that kind of have roster spots secured, you're going to see them pushing and the boundaries and the envelope on every one of, especially the pickoff rule. I'm still very curious to see how the pickoff rule. And Bill, when we were talking about it early on, I told you I thought the pickoff rule would be by a landslide the most impactful rule change. I don't know if it's either just not being tested yet, or if, but this pitch clock is going to have a far bigger impact on hitters than I was thinking.
Just like that, the second hour is here. Glad you're with us for Outkick 360 on this Thursday edition. Armando Salguero will be with us with the NFL headlines, including Aaron Rodgers and the Jets and what's to come there based on the meeting yesterday in California. That's in 20 minutes from right now. Chad, we've got the SEC tournament in full swing. Plenty of other conferences underway. Teams on the bubble, at least we think so, based on what the committee is taking a look at. Davey Hudson is checking out the scoreboard. Davey, give us the very latest with what's happening right now between Ole Miss and Tennessee.
Yeah, certainly, guys. So Ole Miss, Tennessee, we just hit the under 4s, 11-10. But the bigger games of note, we were talking about Mississippi State versus Florida early on. Mississippi State holds on to win that one 69-68. That's going to help them as they looked as though they were going to be solidly in the tournament, but this one definitely solidifies that. But the big game of note that happened earlier today in the Big Ten, Rutgers beats Michigan 62-50. Michigan was one of those teams kind of looking to make one of the last four. They are done. And Rutgers, guys, as you all talked about yesterday, having that conversation, does the Ohio State foot on the line game actually have an impact? Well, it looks like getting this one today, they are more than likely in unless we have somebody come in and still. And one more upset of note that happened, Iowa State takes down number 10 Baylor, so they'll advance and play the winner of Kansas and West Virginia. That game currently underway. Kansas leading. Trying to pull up the latest on that one, 29-21.
Davey, thank you. We'll be checking in on the scores throughout. Chad, I just don't know how much these tournaments matter. I realize if you win your tournament, you're in. There's an automatic bid there. But making a run and how you finish versus what you did to start and then you finish slow, I don't know how you gauge that because I feel like they're team to team, you can make any argument you want to this time of year.
Well, supposedly last 10 no longer matters. You know, that was a metric they look at. What are you in your last 10? That doesn't matter. So in terms of hot or not, should not matter.
Right.
It's just total body of work. I think where it matters is if you're one of those teams that's like Lenardi's last 4 in, first 4 out, next 4 out, if you lose a game against a team that's not going to be in the tournament early in your conference tournament, it's going to knock you out. I don't know that anything happens today to guarantee a team in. Rutgers certainly helped. Michigan, that Davey mentioned on the flip side, probably out, right? So I think you could lose your way out of the tournament. I don't know that anyone's winning their way totally in right now.
So, Lenardi.
Maybe Mississippi State did, maybe. But I don't know that you can say that about anyone for sure.
Lenardi's last 4 in updated a couple of minutes ago. Penn State, Rutgers, Oklahoma State, Utah State. His last 4. First 4 out. Arizona State, Nevada, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. And Vandy's not even in the next 4 at this point for him. But Vandy here in the SEC tournament is a storyline based on what they've done since the 1st of February.
If Vandy beats LSU tonight, they may, depending on who wins or loses, today they may miraculously be in the next 4 out, after that. If they beat Kentucky tomorrow, they're definitely going to be in that conversation for Lenardi. So the Mountain West is the X factor. Utah State, Nevada, 2 teams you mentioned there. Mm-hmm. That's a 3 or 4 bid league. That's one to watch in terms of bid thieves out there for Power 5 conference teams.
Chad, Tiger Woods, we know his marriage issues earlier in his career. He overcame that. Then he has the car accident. He's back. He's got the girlfriend issue now where his ex-girlfriend is suing him. Erica Herman is her name. Suing him for $30 million as a lawsuit, claiming she was tricked last October into leaving Tiger's home, his mansion. I shouldn't even say home. His mansion in Jupiter, Florida, and that he refused to let her back in the home. And the details here, you can find at Outkick.com. It says that Tiger's handlers, there was a non-disclosure agreement signed, by the way, told her to pack a suitcase for a short vacation, and when she arrived at the airport, they told her she had been locked out of her residence in violation of the oral tenancy agreement, in violation of Florida law, according to her legal team here. Further claims that Tiger picked up the tab for a hotel room and certain expenses, but that lasted a short period of time. Her belongings were yanked out of the mansion, $40,000 of her money allegedly missing. Erica says that Tiger's handlers made defamatory allegations about how she obtained said money, and that her and Tiger had an oral agreement stating that she could live at the Tiger Mansion for 11 years. There were still 5 years remaining on that agreement. Because of those 5 years, she will not be allowed to live there. Erica's team says she's due $30 million in compensation. She further claims she performed valuable services in exchange for living at that house rent-free. Amazing.
I'm fascinated with the, like the old possession is 9/10 of the law thing or whatever, which I don't know if that's even true or not. But oral agreement about living in a house?
Again.
Like, if you're not on the mortgage or you're not on the deed,
exactly,
then you're a guest.
If you're not allowed, you're not allowed.
Again, her attorneys are arguing something that does exist in Florida, I guess, because they're citing a law or some restriction that is understood in this lawsuit. So
no, but
I don't know the Florida statutes in this.
I'm reading the wording, though. It says she could live at the residence for 11 years, not would live at the residence for 11 years.
If you're not on the mortgage or the deed, you are a guest in the house.
$30 million.
Yes.
And she has $40,000 in cash there?
My children are just guests at my house. They're not on the deed. They're not paying the mortgage. If I lock them out, they're out.
Let's just.
I'm kidding, of course.
Let's be real here,
Chad. If you're a girlfriend or boyfriend living in someone else's residence, I just assume that person that owned the home could kick you out. And you'd have to go find another living arrangement.
Let's also just be honest here with all of the listeners. Everyone has thought about this because no one that I know has an NDA. I don't think. If they do, I don't know about it. To me, it would be extremely awkward.
We have a non-disparagement agreement, but not a non-disclosure agreement.
I don't know how
I have signed one of those.
How do you approach the girl and say, hey, I need you to sign this? At what level do you...
Tiger Woods level?
Well, Tiger Woods level, but I think there are people even prior to Tiger Woods level that are having this signed. How do you approach her and say, hey, I need this non-disclosure agreement signed? And then she actually follows through. And then at that, if a girl signed that with me, I'd be like, it's not worth it. This is not and if you have to get that done, it's not. I understand where they would come from too on that if I asked that question.
Didn't this woman work for his team or something at some point? Wasn't she associated with him work-wise?
I don't know.
Well, I'm trying to think about the genesis of the relationship and when it began. But I think you just have to honestly say, look, you know my backstory, right?
Right.
You know where things went sideways. My lawyers, my agents, I'm interested in a relationship with you, but to go forward, you need to sign this. I mean, I think you just got to be very clinical and legal about it and say, I want to date you, but you're going to have to sign this before we do so. It's, first off, very, very smart of his legal representation to do this.
But this is way different than walking into, the rumors were, the Aesop fable is that you walk into Derek Jeter's residence and you sign an NDA, you turn your phone in, and on the way out you get a gift pass.
Yeah, it would be.
It's way different than that.
It's worse than a prenup even.
Yeah.
Where it's like what's yours is yours, what's mine is mine, because it's if you're presented with an NDA, your first thought is, what the hell am I getting myself into?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's behind this curtain?
Right. Is this 50 Shades of Tiger Woods gray behind me?
That's what I mean.
Am I going to be beaten? Like, what's going to happen here? What's next for our relationship?
To get to that level, you have to have someone else ask on your behalf, right? That's the level.
Probably.
There's no way he handed that to her.
I think you're more than likely right with Tiger Woods that he had one of his many representatives present this to her. I think if you're in a relationship, and that's probably the worst way to go about it. I think he would need to be the one to do it. Like she's getting served, at her apartment. And it's like, hey, I'm one of Tiger's 18 lawyers. I need you to sign this NDA. I think it'd be better probably if he brought it up to her. But, I mean, never had to ask anyone to sign an NDA, so what do I know?
Same. Never will probably. We're not Tiger.
That's the hope.
But again, like I wonder what level. I think we would be surprised. At what level NBA player, what level NFL player has the non-disclosure agreement available? I think we'd be shocked.
Well, I think
I bet there's a practice squad player that has one.
Oh, yeah. I think everyone who probably makes over $1 million a year would be eligible for NDA presentation.
Eligible but willing. That's the difference. Like, would you be willing to present the NDA?
Depends on...
knowing you don't even play.
Depends on the girl. Right? I mean, I think many would be like, get out of here. I'm not signing this. And a lot are like, I'd love to date this practice squad player.
Maybe so.
I'll do whatever it takes.
Maybe so.
Very eager. There's many that are very eager that want to sign that NDA.
Ole Miss leads Tennessee by 2. It's 21-19 with 10 minutes remaining first half. We'll keep you updated on that score from the SEC tournament. Chad, you've got John Rahm from the PGA Tour saying players should be, quote, thankful for LIV Golf pushing the tour into making changes. PGA Tour says that these were all coming anyway. No. The LIV Tour has pushed this forward. This can be the light at the end of the tunnel for the Golf Association that Mickelson was saying he could not even use the clips of his own highlights from his career whenever they're doing the match on TNT. He's having to pay the PGA for his own highlights. Those things are changing down the road, and they're getting more money now in the win and making the cut purse. There are even some events coming up where there will not be a cut. I wonder where they got that idea from.
Yeah.
Because if you don't make the cut, you're not getting paid. If everyone makes the cut, you're getting something for showing up and participating in the tournament. Rahm's right. There's a lot of criticism about the LIV Tour. Think whatever you want about it. But it has enacted change on behalf of every professional golfer there with the PGA.
Well, some are claiming that the LIV Tour had nothing to do with the no-cut tournaments, and others are saying no, it absolutely has a lot to do with the no-cut tournament. What's going on with that? Yeah, I mean, competition is going to make everyone stronger if you're an employee of those businesses, right? If there's competition for your services, it's going to help things. This is part of what Phil Mickelson was saying. You're right. This could help all of golf based on some of the limitations of the PGA Tour. If they open up about some things that could make it better for the players, it's going to improve the players' earnings. It's going to improve their experience, their ownership over their own rights, everything else. And I think with that, he's right. I mean, there's no other way around it. When you look at it, I think the LIV Tour will ultimately help PGA Tour professionals that stayed on board to get more things for them that they otherwise wouldn't have.
Jordan Spieth says, quote, I would be lying if I said that we would have gone through this without LIV, discussing specifically no cuts and higher and increased purses for wins and placement. Quote, but at the same time, we haven't mentioned them in any of our discussions on what we think's best for the tour. But what they do know and what the tour knows is why players are leaving for the LIV Tour and what they're saying publicly. So you can take both into account.
I think that the vitriol around players who left has cooled from PGA players, right? There was a lot of anger.
Tone has definitely
the tone has changed.
leveled.
I mean, you still got Scotty Scheffler with his Masters dinner invite, saying LIV players meet at the 18th green or whatever at a certain time, a Happy Gilmore reference, which is a joke, type deal. But I do think overall there's not as much anger towards the LIV guys.
Well, and it's hard to have that whenever okay, the major tournaments are going to allow it. And at some point, I think whenever you see the overall, the cut list and who's participating, who's not, at some point there's going to be a merger, right? There's going to be some type of agreement.
I don't know why the PGA would merge.
The best players in the world are going to continue to participate.
I don't know.
Well, here's why. Because the major tournaments are going to want the best players to participate. They're telling us that because they're allowing the LIV Tour players to participate now. But you have to have so many points to qualify for certain majors. So how do you get your points on the tour? Sanctioned events. So that's where the merger comes in. And that's why I think we'll eventually get there. Is you want certain players there for your weekend. And the main sponsors that are on board, or the main sponsors that are members at certain clubs in Augusta, they're going to want the top players there.
It feels like we're done with the exodus of players going to LIV, other than the random guy like a Brooks Koepka, who we saw in the Full Swing documentary, is just lost all confidence in their bodies, had injury issues.
I'm intrigued
Feels
by
like
this,
they're not the top of their game, and those are the ones thinking, I got to get out because I'm not making enough cuts.
Yeah.
And I'm not making much money here, and I'm getting guaranteed money over here. If there's some big names that fall into that part of their career where they're battling injury or confidence or whatever, they may get a couple more of those guys.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, Jon Rahm, Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa, go down the list of the biggest name guys. They're not leaving.
The guys who stayed and were public about it are going to stay.
Yeah.
But they're also benefiting from the guys who left.
You know what the LIV Tour could become if it, survives and it keeps going for a while? It could become the seniors tour quicker. You could get the biggest names in golf at 42 as opposed to 52 or whatever to go there when they're on the downside of their career that are huge names that have won majors and say, I'll go take guaranteed money over here.
The difference is
because I'm probably not going to win a major or win many tournaments.
Tiger reportedly turned down $700 million guaranteed.
That was the rare case of someone just saying, I got enough money.
And so what I'm watching for with Koepka
it's not often that happens.
Koepka, if you watch the Full Swing doc on Netflix, episode 2, you can see the mental turmoil he's in. Just trying to win, make a cut. And now that he's winning in LIV, reports are from Shipnuck, who's got the book coming out following this saga, that he wants back in. Well, he reports at the time he took a $100 million signing bonus. And now we find out how locked in he is to that. If, in fact, he wants back into the PGA Tour. That's the next saga. Is the guys that left, can they get back in? Because the PGA let them back in. That's a huge win for them. If you have the guys come back. If you have Koepka who left come back, that's a massive win for the tour.
The PGA should absolutely let these guys come back if they want to come back. How on earth do you tell the Saudis?
I don't know. That's the next saga, though. And Koepka's first up, apparently.
Well, if you pay someone that much money, like, it's not working out, I'm going to leave. No. I mean, what are they going to – I mean, they're not going to let him leave.
It sounds like he left because he wanted to win because he didn't feel like mentally he was there.
Well, he wanted to
win. He wanted to feel it like he was back in
and
full
he wanted
swing.
to make the guaranteed
Pardon
money.
the pun. Yeah,
because
right.
he felt like I'm not what I need to be to make a lot of money, make the money that I want.
Yeah, and now that he's won a little and he's playing better, he wants back in with the best, the best competition in the world, which he craves. That's what he was doing in 2017 through 2019 and that run that he went on. Coming up, Armando Salguero joins us. What's the latest with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets? Plus, Matthew Stafford and the Rams. Report this morning that the Rams have recently come out and said is not true, is that Matthew Stafford is on the trading block, that the Rams are calling other teams. We'll ask Armando Salguero about that next on Outkick 360.
Does it feel like we're every single year, it feels like we start things off earlier than the year before? Like it blew my mind. Like I was scrolling through social media like last week or the week before last, and you got Vanderbilt rolling, you got Florida going, Kentucky's now going, but then you got some schools that are holding off, till the middle of March, to start spring practice. Before you know it, Mike, like the national championship's going to end, and 2 weeks later they're going to start spring practice. It's getting crazy, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I thought coaches had a little bit more control over when these things started, but I guess not always the case. And I'll give you an example, Trey. I heard Hugh Freeze was kind of upset that they started so early. They started last week. And not that he didn't want to go to camp, but he has just been on the ground running since day one. He's not had time to get away. He wanted a little bit of a break, but hey, that's life in the SEC. You got to do it when you got to do it. And another little anecdote, one of my buddies covers the Florida Gators, so he took off the week prior to spring practice. He thought it was the perfect time just to recharge for fall camp. And what do you know? 3 coaches exit for the NFL. I mean, that was the worst time to take a vacation, but that's life in the SEC.
And it looks like Florida's shoring up the tight end spot, position. And we get to this point where, some guys are on breaks right now. Some coaches are. They take this final week. They want to dip off. They're going to spend time with the family because, from next week until July, they don't get a break. And I'm interested. That's one thing I wanted to ask you about when it comes to college football and where we are at right now. I had this conversation. I was talking with former Tennessee assistant T. Martin, talking with a couple other assistant coaches about this with the recruiting calendar. How much change, in your opinion, have we seen? Because I have my thoughts, but I want your thoughts on how much change we've seen when it comes to the recruiting calendar when you add in the transfer portal and you're adding NIL to the conversation. Like, Mike, these jobs for these coaches have changed in the last 2 years. It's been more added to it. And yeah, they make money. They make good money in the Power 5 level, but job titles aren't the same anymore, brother.
No, and you're seeing it more and more. I mean, the NFL has always been an intriguing option for a lot of these coaches, but it was pretty stunning when a guy like Steve Spurrier made that jump to the NFL. Now, it seems like all these coaches, the first chance they get, it don't matter where it is or what the position is. Hey, I'm going to the NFL because I don't want to have to deal with all this other BS. Like you said, the recruiting, the NIL, the transfer portal, and not only having to deal with all that, but having to deal with all of that essentially in the same period. I mean, it's just incredibly wild. I think they really screwed up with this early high school signing period. It doesn't make any sense now. And now that we got the expanded college football playoff coming right around the corner, I mean, we are going to have what is essentially now the signing day, the national signing day, the week of the college football playoff. So how locked in can Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, and them be for recruiting when they will likely have a game in about 3 days to prepare for that is going to determine how successful their season is? I mean, something has to be done. It's hard for me to feel too bad, Trey, for some of these guys making $10, $11 million, but they're at the high bar. I mean, most of the assistants are doing all the work and they're not getting paid near as much. So yeah, I mean, we're just going to keep losing more and more quality coaches to do other things because we're just putting too much on these guys.
Big shout out to our Outkick staff on hand with us each and every day. Chad, they've got the TV set up for us. We can watch the conference tournaments here in studio. Yep. March Madness is here. Got scoreboard updates throughout the next, 3-4 weeks.
They are providers. They're providers.
That's right.
They provided us with a chance to watch these games. They provide. They do a great job.
Armando Salguero about to join us first, though. Davey Hudson with the latest scoreboard update. Tie game at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville.
That one, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I don't even – there we go. It's 31-31. Sorry.
They just scored.
I'm amazed with the ACC right now. I know Miami held on. They beat Wake Forest earlier today, 74-72. But right now, still 6 minutes left in the game. Duke is beating Pitt 90-56.
6 minutes left, Chad. 90 points.
Tough end of the season for old Pitt.
You were telling me the score for Tennessee Gonzaga earlier this season was
99-80.
Yeah.
It was in a preseason game. Yeah, but it was on pay-per-view.
Tennessee currently tied with Ole Miss 31-31 with 4 minutes left in the first half. Armando Salguero joins us. We are on Aaron Rodgers Watch at Outkick.com. And when I say that, that means Armando Salguero is on Aaron Rodgers Watch. Armando, good to see you.
I have a bone to pick with Davey Hudson. Serious bone.
Yep.
I am a University of Miami alumnus. And although I didn't watch the game today, I'm quite certain that Miami's victory over Wake Forest was a 74-72 rout. It was a destruction of Wake Forest, a stomping of Wake Forest. And I really take it personally that he didn't portray it that way.
It was the most dominant 2-point win we've seen in basketball history. That's what the people in the streets are saying about that game, Armando.
I do want to apologize, Armando.
Woodshed whipping.
Yes.
Yes, a woodshed whipping, Hudson. Woodshed whipping.
I love it. He's like, I'm a Miami alumnus, but I didn't watch the game. But if I did, this would have been a whipping.
I was afraid you had actually taped it, and we're trying to avoid getting the score, and we're going to go back. And I was like, well, I just ruined that for Armando.
Spoiler alert.
Armando Salguero with us, Outkick.com. Does Aaron Rodgers want to play this upcoming season? That's the big question, right?
That is the number one question, and there is no number two. Because number two would be, and where would he play? And we've already got that answer. The answer would be the New York Jets. The first question is the one that Aaron Rodgers, his family, his agent, his advisors are working through. And the New York Jets are tried to convince him to come to the right answer as far as they're concerned.
How does that impact Green Bay and what they do moving forward? How soon do they need to know this answer?
Yeah, so the Green Bay Packers would love to know by the start of the league year on March 15th. They have to be in salary cap compliance by then. And to have Aaron Rodgers on your roster at that point is a significant problem for the Green Bay Packers. They need or would need to make an adjustment to his salary by then, to his contract. And definitely so if he's going to be traded.
Yeah.
And so, we've got this. This will be over by next Wednesday.
Okay. And knowing that, from what you can tell and what you've reported, how have things gone with the meeting with Johnson and Rodgers, the owner for the Jets, and also reports that the Packers want a first-round pick in return and then a future pick if he plays in 2024?
All right, so let's take that in reverse order. The Packers would love a first-round pick in return, and they're probably not going to get it. It's going to be conditional. All these things are going to be conditional because Aaron Rodgers is more than likely a one-year rental, right?
Yeah.
And
it's been that way for Green Bay.
Year to year for sure, right?
Absolutely.
You can't think of it as 2 years.
So who gives up a first-round draft pick for a quarterback for one season? That's if the Jets do that, wow. That's desperation at its height. Yeah. And that is you're just trying to save your job at all costs. And I need one playoff game to do that for me. Get me there, Aaron Rodgers. So that report, there's nuance there. I doubt that that's where it ends up, hard and fast. Now, as far as what was your other question?
With Woody Johnson flew to California and met with Rodgers. Yeah. He flies back, but the reports were he was very happy. We certainly don't know how Rodgers felt about things.
Yeah, I don't know what was said in that meeting. I know that ESPN has reported that they were optimistic about what happened and what could happen next. What else is going to be said out of the New York Jets building? Yeah. They're not going to say, oh, my God, we met and the guy's a freak and he was sitting in darkness and, we tried to light a candle and he blew it out. And so we sat there all in, they're not going to, it's not going to be like that. We're optimistic and we'll see what happens.
Armando Salguero with us on Outkick 360. The last couple days I've been discussing the Lamar Jackson contract and the non-exclusive franchise tag. And while, look, I hear everyone across the country, reporters, that are at the top of the front of the table, just like you, Armando, saying, hey, this is not collusion. Well, it's not collusion in regards to the $250 million guaranteed that Deshaun Watson received. Owners are allowed to say, we don't like that contract. I'm just surprised at the amount of teams that don't have the guy at quarterback that are saying, we're not interested. And when they say that, that doesn't mean they're not interested in the fully guaranteed money. They're not interested in even picking up the phone and negotiating with him to see what it would take to get him there and give up 2 first-round picks. To me, that's not that steep of a price for him based on what Atlanta or Miami or Washington would have to say with what they're doing this upcoming season. What do you say about the idea that the teams are just not saying, we're in, we'd like to talk to him?
Well, first of all, there is this term in the NFL that all teams use all the time, and it always means this: right now. Right now.
Right.
And
today.
So exactly. And stuff changes 5 minutes from now because the NFL is fluid. So look, I get it when certain teams are saying they're not interested. Of course, the New England Patriots are not interested.
Right.
Of course, the Miami Dolphins are not interested. They are going forward with what they know. Okay. And the fact of the matter is that Lamar Jackson, even at his height, it was great, but he's not been at his height in a couple of years now. This is a situation where a player who is representing himself and is clearly dug in believes he deserves full guarantees, despite the fact that he cannot fully guarantee one, even being in the lineup in December and January when his team needs him the most to make a playoff run, because the last 2 years he's missed games in December and January when the Baltimore Ravens needed exactly that. So that's problem number one. The idea that Lamar Jackson deserves a fully guaranteed contract, it really is kind of mind-blowing given his durability concerns. That's number one. Number two, the idea that owners would come together, all 31 of them minus the Ravens, and decide to give the Ravens a pass competitively, salary cap relief, by not being interested in Lamar Jackson together in agreement. That's just nuts. If this was Patrick Mahomes, trust me, people would be interested. If it was Joe Burrow, people would be interested. Lamar Jackson, I believe he's 1-3 in the playoffs.
Right, but if I may, Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes don't get to this point. You don't have the option to bid on those quarterbacks. The Ravens just allowed this to happen. So, I mean, if I've got Carson Wentz like last year, or Sam Howell, if I'm Washington, you're telling me the Commanders aren't interested in Lamar Jackson over Sam Howell right now? I don't buy that.
Right. Well, they can't be interested right now anyway. they can't even talk to Lamar Jackson. In fact, they can't talk to Lamar Jackson until next Wednesday. So right now, there's nobody interested. It's tampering for any. Lamar Jackson is not a free agent. He is a franchise tag player, and there can be no communication with him until the start of the league year.
This is to me, guys, and I mentioned this to Chad. This is to me when he needs an agent. This moment, because we're only hearing from one side of the reporting of this and the sources. No one's talking to Lamar, at least to my knowledge, because nothing's been leaked on his end that I can tell from last August until now.
And oh, by the way, Jonathan, just to be clear, it's not the Baltimore Ravens who allowed to do this. The Baltimore Ravens, from my understanding, offered him a contract that went over $50 million a year on a annual average.
Yes,
which would make him the highest paid quarterback or close to it, depending on hundreds of thousands of dollars compared to Aaron Rodgers. The problem is the guarantee. And so the Baltimore Ravens, they're just not there. And I don't, the folks that use the Deshaun Watson interest last year, the folks that use that as an example, or the Russell Wilson contract last year as proof that there is some sort of collusion, you're really proving the opposite of what you're arguing. Because how did that work out last year for the Denver Broncos and the Cleveland Browns? It's not smart. And so the Ravens, who are a pretty smart organization, they're not going there at this time.
Do you think, Armando, there is a surprise team that is very interested in Lamar Jackson that's not top of mind right now? I'll give you an example, the Tennessee Titans. Is there a surprise out there that maybe will be negotiating with him that really we're not thinking about at this moment?
Yeah, it's those, it's funny. It's like in life, dangerous people are the quiet ones. Those are the folks you have to worry about, not the ones that are, doing this all the time.
The ones that have anonymous reports everywhere going through all through the media. It's the ones that's completely dead silent.
Those are the ones that the wolves that lay in wait. Those are the ones that are dangerous. And I would say this, suppose the New York Jets fail to land Aaron Rodgers. Suppose Aaron Rodgers retires. The New York Jets. How's that for
It's a good one.
Armando Salguero with us. The New York Giants, they have Daniel Jones back under contract on an extension. They have Saquon Barkley on the franchise tag. What do you make of what seemed like at the 11th hour move right before the deadline? They tagged Saquon because they got a deal done with Daniel Jones.
Right, and that's the right move. They did what they needed to do, and they believe that they are going to get a multi-year deal done with Saquon Barkley this offseason. So he won't go to the season as a franchise tagged player. Having said that, I felt that the Daniel Jones negotiation kind of showed a little bit of desperation on the Giants' part. They didn't want to franchise Daniel Jones because they believe that would have hamstrung them in their ability to fill in around Daniel Jones. But they took that burden upon themselves. Those negotiations, I assume, if Daniel Jones was paying attention, it should have included the fact that, Daniel, if you don't agree to a certain, lower amount, we cannot help you. You will not improve because you don't have more help around you, and you may not see the end of this contract. And yet Daniel Jones is getting $40 million a year. Daniel Jones today is tied for the 7th highest paid quarterback on an annual average basis in the NFL. In the next 2 years, he gets $82 million guaranteed. which is higher than $40 million a year. It's $41 million a year. Is Daniel Jones the 7th best quarterback in the NFL?
No,
he threw 15 touchdown passes.
He's just next up. Ask Geno Smith who's next up.
That was going to be my question. Did that contract surprise you, Armando?
Geno Smith?
Yeah.
You know, $25 million a year for Geno Smith feels a lot better to me.
53. He gets 53 this year. $53 million in 2023.
It's a lot.
The Geno Smith contract, as a bridge quarterback. The Geno Smith contract is 3 years, $75 million, right?
Right.
And you know,
they basically he's looking at, if I'm him, I know I'm not seeing the next 2 years, right? Like the money's up front. I'm franchised for $53 million, and Lamar is getting paid $35. Like that's
well. Wait a second now.
Go ahead.
One of those guys threw 30 touchdown passes.
That's true. Set a franchise record, Armando. Geno Smith did this year.
And I'm not saying Geno Smith is all that by any means.
I know. Yeah.
But he was available to the Seattle Seahawks in December. Was he not? He was there.
Hey, and I discredited him before the season. I can't do it now. I'm not trying to rip on the guy. But when I saw the money that he's getting this year up front, that's crazy. Like that is they're paying the guy for reaching his ceiling.
That is fair. That is absolutely true. Let's do this. Baltimore Ravens today, right now, would give Lamar Jackson that same contract.
Sure.
But there's no way that Lamar Jackson would take that contract. And as we just discussed earlier, he's turned down deals and proposals that pay him over $50 million a year on average.
And now the Ravens have said, hey, you're turning it down. We're going to pay you less than the exclusive tag by $12 million this year, unless you can get a better offer. And there's the intriguing part, because with the non-exclusive tag, what is it, 33 million this upcoming season compared to 45?
32.4 million, and history is on their side.
Yeah.
Because there's only one player who has ever gotten an offer sheet while being a non-exclusive franchise player, and that was Sean Gilbert way back in 1998, and it hasn't happened since.
Is there a player who was not tagged that is the leading storyline next Wednesday on the 15th whenever free agency begins? Maybe Orlando Brown?
Yeah, I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs, he believes that he's the best tackle in football. Okay, if you want to believe that, brother, you do what you need to do. The Kansas City Chiefs don't believe that. The Kansas City Chiefs now have a history of being able to replace anyone not named Patrick Mahomes and win big. They lost Tyreek Hill last year and went and won the Super Bowl. So there's that.
Fair enough. Final thing for you. Earlier today, reports were surfacing that Matthew Stafford was on the trade block by the Rams. They've since, Les Snead has come out and said, hey, that's not true. He's a pillar of our organization along with Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp. But they are trying to move, it sounds like, Jalen Ramsey and Allen Robinson. What would that command on the trade block right now as we head into the draft?
Right. So they want market value for Jalen Ramsey. They want 2 first-round picks for Jalen Ramsey. Good luck, because it's not just giving up the picks. It's giving up the picks, and he's going to want to get paid again. And he's already at $20 million a year. And so I don't know. That's a hard pill to swallow. Most teams don't want to swallow it, which leads me back to Lamar Jackson, by the way. It's not just, if you want in on Lamar Jackson, it's not just paying him a ridiculous amount of money and guaranteeing all of it. It's also, you just gave up 2 first-round picks for him. And so now, what team are you putting around him?
Yeah, that's fair. I just don't buy it from Atlanta. Atlanta was in on Deshaun Watson. They knew the price to trade for Watson if they wanted to sign him. They were one of 2 finalists before Cleveland got back in, and all of a sudden they're not interested in Lamar Jackson.
Well, they may have backed off because they found out Cleveland's price.
Well, Cleveland was given the $250, and they gave up 3 first-round picks and then the second and third for multiple years.
Right. They knew the price as far as what it would take to trade for him.
Yeah.
But clearly they were not where the Cleveland Browns were on the contract, and that's why they didn't. One of the reasons they didn't get picked.
But that's why I don't buy the 2 first-round picks for Lamar Jackson, though, from Atlanta. To me, that's not a steep price compared to Deshaun Watson on the trade.
I think they'd be willing to do that. I think it's the price that he was going to get from Cleveland when he was deciding. That was the deal breaker for everyone
right now,
else.
the best offer is $100 million less for Lamar Jackson and 2 first-round picks, and that's it.
Well, wait a second now, because before last year, the last time we saw Deshaun Watson play football, didn't he throw like 32 touchdown passes in a year?
He's very good, yeah.
Compared to like 4 interceptions or 5.
Yep. That was in a season prior to when we last saw him play. Lamar Jackson was the unanimous MVP, not Deshaun Watson.
I grant you that, but he has in fact played 2 years.
And Watson hasn't. Watson's played 6
games
games since then. That's my point.
I'm sorry?
Watson's played 6 games since then.
Right, but what I'm saying is
Lamar was 8-4 last season.
Few of the players, when Deshaun Watson last played before he got his contract, and Lamar Jackson last played as he's trying to get this contract, that Deshaun Watson guy looks better because he actually stepped on the field.
Well, the Browns are desperate. I mean, that's what the league
and
knows.
Then the Browns are
they
done.
were desperate to do anything to get a top 5. They saw a guy. I mean, it's the rest of the league. It's collusion. They're not going to do it. They've all made up their mind that that's going to be the outlier, and they're not going to make this a trend. They're never going to prove it, Armando. But I just think every owner, it's one mind. They share the same mind on this, other than Jimmy Haslam.
Depending on the player. Does Joe Burrow get a fully guaranteed contract?
I don't think so.
Not from Cincy.
I don't think anyone. I think the other owners have gotten together and said, we're not doing it.
Well, the escrow.
He's crazy. We're not doing it. And there's no live tour of the NFL where you can go get that guaranteed money, so you'll deal with us.
Well, the live tour,
and our teams.
There are the 7 or 8 owners that can put the money aside in an escrow account for the fully guaranteed money. That's the live tour of the NFL.
I think it's the one thing where, we'll talk about this in a bigger segment, it's the one area where owners will sacrifice winning for money, for the greater good of we are in control. We begin to cede control to the players with fully guaranteed contracts for this many guys that are coming up. And they don't want to be the NBA or Major League Baseball.
Armando, on social, we've got Jennifer saying Armando is great. We agree.
Yes, Jennifer's right.
Armando joins us each and every Thursday at this time. Thank you so much. We've loved the coverage from Indy, and we'll be following Aaron Rodgers' watch at Outkick.
Go Canes.
There we go. Armando.
Enjoy the oasis of freedom down in Florida, Armando.
Yes. Armando Salguero, our guest from Outkick.com. You can read his work there. Coming up, a scoreboard update, and then as we start hour number 3, we dive into many topics, including St. Peter's and not a winning streak, but the opposite.
In reverse.
The losing streak.
In reverse.
This is Outkick 360.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition, but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey.
Come on, live a little.
Welcome into Outkick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
So the higher that number can be, the better you are with the committee. It's really that simple.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really got to lean into the turns.
He's got incredible taste in which media figures he listens to.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
Why are we going through Melania's goods? Don't make Brittany Griner out to be some type freedom fighter. Shouldn't there be a little bit of common sense? Let's roll them, big boy. What do you got?
They want to find someone to be the face of domestic terrorism, and they want it to be a right-wing Trump supporter. Don't let them entrap you into doing something dumb. But they were hyper-rational. They looked at the data, and they said it makes no sense for me to submit to this COVID shot mandate.
Get the shot or you can't go to your brother's wedding. Get the shot or you can't go to your daughter's graduation. Get the shot or else.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, the bold taste of a Southern legend.
We head to Bridgestone Arena as we welcome you back across the Outkick network. Trey Wallace covering the SEC tournament for Outkick.com. 46-35 the score, just underway in the second half as Tennessee leads Ole Miss. Trey, what's the latest there and what's to come tonight?
Yeah, Tennessee finally opens it up a little bit, Jonathan and Chad. Nice crowd here at Bridgestone this afternoon. I think everybody's looking forward to the Auburn-Arkansas game tonight. I think that's going to be a thriller. That's going to be a 6 o'clock tip-off here from Bridgestone Arena. Earlier game of the day, Mississippi State tried to give it away, but they ended up taking it. They will play tomorrow. So it's lining up. Tennessee starts to separate themselves a little bit, boys, and we'll see what comes tonight with Auburn-Arkansas. Then you got Vanderbilt Commodores looking to go on a run here. Right across the street from Memorial, pretty much down the road.
We're jealous of your seat courtside, Trey.
Now you get to go back courtside.
We'll
Trey,
be looking
so
for
enjoy.
you.
Yeah, we're looking for you.
Well, just so you know, Clay is also sitting behind me, so somehow I got a better seat than he did. So I kind of rubbed that in just a little bit on the way out. But no, guys, we got you covered here, and I know you guys got it covered there. And go to Outkick.com and follow all the work.
I'm shocked Clay's we got a press pass and not in the Lexus Lounge. So that's a big win for you guys. He's impressed.
I don't know how he got down, but he's down. So it is what it is.
Follow Trey, and you can also check out Outkick.com for the very latest from the conference tournaments in the SEC right here in Nashville. Trey, thank you, man. We'll check in soon.
Yeah, I look forward to talking tomorrow. Thanks, guys.
Yep, sounds great. Trey Wallace there. Auburn, Arkansas, who benefits more from the win? Seeding-wise, or does it even matter? This is my thinking. I don't think it matters.
Auburn probably benefits more.
A seed better?
They're looking at like a 10 or 11 right now. So maybe a 9. I don't know. I think Arkansas is more 8-9 seed right now.
Okay.
8-9 game.
So they could
7.
be a play-in or not, is what it could mean?
Yeah, it's going to be a good game tonight, though. That is the best matchup of the day, I think.
Headlines when we return, plus a full scoreboard update from across the country with college hoops. Next on Outkick 360.
There's a bunch of teams this year that are entering the season with a closer by committee. What are your thoughts on closer by committee versus having a main closer?
In 2 words, it's ass. Here's the problem. This is where sabermetrics and baseball clash, and the sabermetric guys don't understand why the baseball guys can't just get it. When the sabermetric guys look at a bullpen, they look at a list of data, right? First pitch strikes, who gets the first hitter out, which is the big hitter for the reliever, more than the other guys. Walks, your whip, how you hold runners, all these other things. The problem is that none of those factors account for the inning in which that happens. And unfortunately for sabermetric guys, pitchers think differently in the 9th inning than they do in the 8th, than they do in the 7th, than they do in the 6th. It's just human nature. Because everybody in the 9th inning hitting in a game that's close is hitting with the mentality of the tying runs on 3rd, I need to get him in or get on base. That's a different mental approach than they take for their other at-bats during the game, for the most part. Pitchers have to change and elevate in the 9th inning their mental approach to pitching, and some guys just can't do it. It's just not, I can remember, I think it was in my career, 2003, the Red Sox went with a closer by committee to open the season, and they had a great bullpen. It turned out to be a disaster. It doesn't work. So in spring training, you go through a couple stages. You go from the young guy whose mental approach to every day in camp is, my God, I want to make the team. There's the younger guy whose mental approach is, I just want them to remember me. To the guy who's kind of established, to the guy who knows he's going to be pitching opening day and shows up at spring training as your ace and is getting ready. And those guys, those veteran guys that kind of have roster spots secured, you're going to see them pushing and the boundaries and the envelope on every one of, especially the pickoff rule. I'm still very curious to see how the pickoff rule. And Bill, when we were talking about it early on, I told you I thought the pickoff rule would be by a landslide the most impactful rule change. I don't know if it's either just not being tested yet, or but this pitch clock is going to have a far bigger impact on hitters than I was thinking.
Just like that, the final hour's here, Thursday edition. Glad you're with us. Outkick 360 across the Outkick network. Hutton Withrow. We got conference tournaments going on right now. We're in the heart of the early session. Evening session still to come. Bridgestone Arena, a block and a half away from where we sit right now, where Tennessee and Ole Miss are in the second half with more. Live scoreboard update. Here's Davey Hudson.
Thanks, guys. So the Vols have been able to extend the lead a little bit with about 13 minutes left to go in the game. They are up on Ole Miss 50-41. Another game we haven't really talked about, but it has been close throughout. UCLA, second-ranked Bruins leading Colorado 69-63. A little under 3 minutes left in that one. And Kansas look as though they are going to hold on. They are playing West Virginia and currently leading 62-53. Duke, ultimately going back to the ACC, did not get to 100. They finally just decided, you know what, we'll just throw in the towel. They ended up winning that one 96-69 over Pitt.
96-69.
Mississippi Call off State. The dogs. Duke did.
Speaking of the dogs,
they didn't
Mississippi State wins over Florida 69-68 earlier. They advanced to take on Alabama
Big
tomorrow.
win for their NCAA tournament hopes. Would have been a huge loss, I should say. I don't know what the win does other than they were probably in before and now they're really probably in. But a loss would have been bad.
Chad, what are you expecting from the Vols?
I don't know. Honestly, I mean, it's
been a crazy year where
I still don't know what they are without Ziegler.
They look like a championship team for about 2 months.
They're a good defensive team, and they've been number one in the Ken Palm defensive efficiency pretty much start to finish in college basketball. Ole Miss each team's going to deploy a different strategy. Ole Miss is running and trapping whoever brings the ball up, and it's worked a few times to create some turnovers. So everyone's going to play them different and look at them different. So it's just hard to tell what they are right now. Ole Miss making a run to get back in it right now, as it is now a 50-43 game. No, Ole Miss for 3, 50-46. Now down to a 4-point game
with 12 minutes to play.
Tennessee leading Ole Miss.
And Ole Miss, they're not going anywhere, but this moves Tennessee down a seed if they lose.
I would think so.
A 5 seed probably.
I would
5-12 matchup.
Think a 4 or 5. Maybe not. Maybe not a 5. If they're a 3 now, I'd probably move them down to a 4. If they're a 4 right now, it probably moves them to a 5. But I think they're probably a 3 at this point. But again, Hutton, what do we say every year?
We don't know.
We don't know year to year how they view conference tournaments. A year ago, they didn't matter. The year before, they did. So it's hard to tell.
Hit us up on social at Outkick 360. Chad, Arch Manning, do you buy that he's actually in a battle with Quinn Ewers at Texas as we enter spring ball? Sarkisian saying it's open. I don't buy it. I think this is setting the table to try to motivate Ewers. If I'm Ewers, I know I'm starting. That would be my mentality. And I think going into this season, you would want to redshirt Manning if you could, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's redshirting. Just get Ewers another year as a starter with that experience, and then, Arch would start. Because, if he's as good as advertised, he's probably going to be gone after, 3 years removed from high school no matter what. So I don't know if you have to redshirt him.
But here's also
to do that.
The line of thinking now with the open transfer portal. If Ewers thought he was going to lose the job to Manning, why is he still there? If it's an open competition. Just knowing the lay of the land of college football today.
I think it's semantics.
I agree.
So
is it a headline or not? Is basically the topic.
What they want to happen is they want Quinn Ewers to win the job. They also, you don't land Arch Manning.
Yeah, that's fair
and have
too.
him come in and say, you're on the bench, kid, and you have no chance at starting. I think what Texas ultimately wants and what Steve Sarkisian wants is for Quinn Ewers to win the job and be the undoubted leader of the team, quarterback going into the season. I think when you say, it's an open competition in spring, it's because you've landed maybe this generational type guy with a famous last name. And if he's coming into your program, I think it's fine to say that it's an open competition, even if we don't believe it. Even if he doesn't want to believe it. I'm talking about Sarkisian when he says it.
Sarkisian, what's the win total that keeps his job? 8 wins. That was last year. How do you staircase it to where he's actually coaching Arch Manning when they move to the SEC.
I don't think he's in trouble. And I say that because of Arch Manning and because I don't think they're going – someone that could get the recruiting class he just landed. I don't think they're going to want to go into a transition on top of the SEC to a new coach at that time. Now, it could be disastrous. They could go to Quinn Ewers, and they're terrible, and that's the chance for anyone, right? I mean, if it's really bad, they could fire him. But, I mean, I think if this is a 7-5 team, I think he's fine. 7-5, 8-4 type team, he's going to be just fine.
A lot of people that don't think 7 wins keeps his job, though, with what is expected at Texas.
I think if you do that.
But you do have Arch Manning
it's one of those
who chose
moves
Texas.
you make.
You're right.
I've not been that impressed with Steve Sarkisian so far at Texas. There's some good and some bad. I'm not overly impressed.
Yeah, there's
but
not
if you
enough
make that
consistency.
move, it's a move you make when you're saying, I know who we're going to go get, and it's big time.
Or I know who Arch likes.
Or we know exactly. David Cutcliffe is going to get back in.
Right.
But they know exactly who they're going to go get, right? Who the AD wants, who is best for the program, everything.
Yeah. Again, I don't know what the win total is, but saying that's an open competition tells me he knows what the win total is. He also knows who controls that. It's the freshman.
I think it's just coach talk right now. I mean, I do. Look, if you've got a really established guy coming back, Hendon Hooker a year ago at Tennessee, that was one where Josh Heupel said, there's no competition. Right. He's a starter going into the year because you knew it, and you didn't need to say that there was competition, and you didn't want to create competition. I think with Arch Manning, it's good to create at least the illusion of competition when he comes in, even if it's not reality.
Right now at Outkick.com, just posted, John Ruiz. I won't call him a booster because he's suing the NCAA over the word. He is can we say team owner? Would he be okay with that, Chad? John Ruiz at Miami?
I think he would definitely be okay with that. Would the University of Miami be okay with that description? Probably not.
Should I just call him AD? He wants to be very clear that he is not a booster, quote unquote, by NCAA definition. And within the next 10 days, he plans to file a lawsuit over that, over the definition of booster and how the NCAA has categorized him as a booster for Miami based on the penalty that Miami has negotiated with the NCAA to take, where it's the program's issue. Ruiz isn't being penalized, at least from the NCAA. Maybe he's going to claim that his business has been penalized. We'll see. The athletes will not be penalized in anything that the Hurricanes have admitted to or not admitted to, but have signed on the dotted line for. But, Chad, Ruiz, we're about to see another precedent set here.
Yeah.
If he does this.
This is very important. This is a story to follow because I think John Ruiz is right. He was a booster.
Right.
Alum who's a big supporter and all that, and there's rules around boosters in the NCAA, but once you get into the collective business, you are a separate entity that's not just a normal booster.
Which is why they were not penalized, only the university.
I kind of think John Ruiz is doing the Lord's work here.
He says he does not meet the definition of booster.
He's going to carry the mantle for all the collectives or anyone who graduated from a school that runs a collective
this is also,
that otherwise would be viewed as a booster. He's going to get the legal precedent for all of those people.
And this is huge for Texas A&M.
Possibly, yes.
Because A&M... what they're doing is you can join the Aggie Club, right? And you donate a certain amount, and then it goes through the athletic department, but you don't get tickets. It's a separate payment, quote unquote, for tickets. Well, as a part of the first definition of booster through the NCAA, provided a donation in order to obtain season tickets for any sport at the university. That's bullet point number 1. Number 2, participated in or has been a member of an organization promoting the university's athletic programs, made financial contributions to the athletic department or to a university booster organization, arranged for or provided employment for enrolled student athletes, assisted or has been requested by university staff to assist in the recruitment of prospective student athletes, assisted in providing benefits to enrolled student athletes and their families, or been involved otherwise in promoting university athletics.
I mean, that's a lot.
As long as you are independent from the university and everything funnels through you for the player, you're not a booster based on this. That's how I read this. And as long as you're not getting season tickets in exchange for that from the university, Wipe your hands of it.
Yes.
You're not a booster. And that's going to help Texas A&M. That's why Texas A&M is saying, yeah, we did this. And no, we're not breaking any rules based on the way it's written right now.
What if Texas A&M jumps in on this lawsuit?
I wouldn't do anything if I'm Texas A&M.
Yeah, like I said,
I would sit
right
back
now,
and let John Ruiz
You've
be
got
my
John
guy.
Ruiz doing the Lord's work, who's going to set that legal precedent for A&M and everyone else that's trying to prove that the term booster and the definition of booster, not just the term, the definition of the word booster is outdated with today's NIL landscape in the NCAA. And if he does that, that's going to be really good for these schools that have active NIL programs and collectives, especially when they're led by alumni, formerly people that would be known as boosters.
Right. And it comes down to, did his company, did his business come to terms with an athlete based on a acquaintance, a relationship with the university, or was this just between him and the athlete? And that's all he has to prove to win this. On the other side, I mean, if you have a good representation, if you're the NCAA, you can also set a precedent by winning this, by not letting him win.
How good are the NCAA attorneys these days?
I
would say they're pretty good still. I mean,
they're okay unless you go to the Supreme Court.
That NCAA basketball tournament makes a tiny bit of money for them, and it all goes into the NCAA. So they do have money where they can pay high-priced attorneys. Let me also ask this question to you, Hudden. How hard do they want to fight this?
Well, I would think pretty hard based on the fact that they just came to terms with a penalty for Miami. I don't know why they're back into this game.
I wouldn't care. Like, if I were them, I wouldn't care. I'd almost just...
They're only going after the high-profile issues, though.
I would almost just want John Ruiz, if you could just bypass everyone and take this immediately to the Supreme Court, right? And say, will you tell us what this is, please?
Well,
sirs and ma'ams, will you please help us out with the definition of this? Because we can't figure it out. And does the NCAA even really, care? That's my point is,
I know.
What do they really care?
Well, how much are they scared compared to care, right? For whatever reason, they just penalized the Miami Hurricanes based on the twins that are playing hoops, right?
Yeah.
So
the Cavender twins.
Why did they do that if they are scared about another lawsuit, which Ruiz is saying he's going to file in the next 10 days? He's yet to file first, but he's got to sue before we get there. But again, like this was the reason why we saw Emmert take a step back as an institution, as an NCAA body, and say, hey, universities handle it, state laws, follow that, conferences, govern. We're not involved anymore. Have at it. And now they're back in it. But they're only in it with the university, and Ruiz is stepping up on behalf of Miami, even though it's not on behalf of Miami, to win this.
Yeah, it's
because he's won everything else.
The question I'd have is just how much of it is I believe this to be right versus I just want to be right, and I want someone to tell me I'm right.
Well,
what's the cause? If you're the NCAA, are you really dying on this hill of the definition of booster versus collective versus everything else? And do you just want to be right against John Ruiz so bad? Is it pride, or do you really believe in something?
I think it's belief in the fact that we're going to. It's a cry for help, honestly. They need federal legislation.
They do, but they're having John Ruiz sue them to get help.
Maybe they don't
At
realize
least help
that.
On a definition.
Maybe it takes another loss to where all hope is lost in any regulation, in any penalty for breaking guidelines. They're not even rules. They call them guidelines. Are you telling
interim guidelines?
Again,
like some of them, right? That's not even just guidelines.
Just think about if you own a business, if you work for a company and you get something sent to you that says these are guidelines versus this is the employee handbook rule, which one are you following?
The
rule.
I would follow the law or the rule.
The rule, not the guidelines.
Some more loose suggestions,
the
though.
Guideline,
that's what we
it's
need.
a suggestion. Like that's how I take that, and it's guidelines that they're penalizing Miami over. And the reason why they're not worried about the university coming back on them is the university basically settled before it came to be an issue. So they agreed on the penalty ahead of time.
It's a lawsuit to follow because it is a precedent setter for
Shannon
everyone.
Terry,
it's not just about Miami versus the NCAA. This is a precedent setter for everyone.
Shannon Terry of On3, he said recently that he sees over the next 12 months or so federal legislation really getting a boost in regards to name, image, likeness. He'll be in with us next week. But if that's the case, maybe this is the white flag or the red flag or the neon sign that says, please jump in and do something about this. We've had politicians on, we've had congressmen and women on that say, yeah, we've talked with leadership of college sports, but we haven't really gotten anywhere. And if it's state to state, we need some governing umbrella over that.
I really wish that there was a way. I'm not trying to involve the Supreme Court and everything, the highest court of the land.
Might as well. Go ahead.
But can you do like an arbitration process? I mean, not necessarily just with the Supreme Court, but I wish there was enough continuity on both sides that both sides could agree on an arbitrator that could come in the middle and say, this is it.
The arbiter of all things.
Yeah.
NCAA. You see where Durant
But it would take the NCAA and the other side.
Right.
Schools,
It would be,
collectives.
both.
Hey, this guy or this girl or this group will be, and it's probably going to be the Supreme Court will be that group.
The haves
but
and the
this
have-nots.
group will decide on the rules moving forward.
You see Durant warming up last night? He was supposed to make his home debut with the Suns, and he slipped. It looked like the floor was wet. It was awkward.
Yeah.
Although if you're nearly 7 feet tall, I guess any fall is awkward.
Yeah, Kevin Durant has a way of looking like a baby giraffe at times to begin with, just with his size and how lanky he is.
Yeah, he doesn't really have his footing whenever he
Yeah.
For the most part, he always does. But when he does it, it looks
Look,
you're right,
I'm
it
not,
looks like
I'm
a giraffe
not commenting
falling.
on his coordination. I realize he's one of the greatest basketball players of all time. I'm just saying
When he
how
falls.
lanky he is.
When he falls.
When he falls, it looks like a baby giraffe trying to walk for the first
It
time.
also, like his ankle buckled, too. It looked like the floor was wet on just warm. He was just going for a layup during warm-ups. And
What Suns ball boy just got tossed for that mistake?
I don't know.
That's what I'm thinking. Like if
Think about
someone over like the head managers, pointing out, is this your wet spot here, Colin? Is this yours, Logan? Whoever the kid is.
Well,
Get
but
that
of
up next
all
time.
players, there were multiple players that went through that spot, right? And then it's Durant that hits it and slips and buckles.
That's not the one you want.
And imagine being the fans going to the game. We just got up. Is this load management? No, it's an actual injury to the player.
Couldn't have been
we
that
just traded
12th
for.
player on the bench. Had to be Kevin Durant.
It had to be him. Hit us up with your thoughts and comments at Outkick 360. You can join Chad in the chat as well on YouTube. Scoreboard updates over the next 45 minutes, plus Ja Morant, the very latest with the Grizzlies star and everything off the court. Next on Outkick 360.
Does it feel like we're every single year? It feels like we start things off earlier than the year before. Like it blew my mind. Like I was scrolling through social media like last week or the week before last, and you got Vanderbilt rolling, you got Florida going, Kentucky's now going, but then you got some schools that are holding off, till the middle of March, to start spring practice. Before you know it, Mike, like the national championship's going to end, and 2 weeks later they're going to start spring practice. It's getting crazy, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I thought coaches had a little bit more control over when these things started, but I guess not always the case. And I'll give you an example, Trey. I heard Hugh Freeze was kind of upset that they started so early. They started last week. And not that he didn't want to go to camp, but he has just been on the ground running since day one. He's not had time to get away. He wanted a little bit of a break, but hey, that's life in the SEC. You got to do it when you got to do it. And another little anecdote, one of my buddies covers the Florida Gators. So he took off the week prior to spring practice. He thought it was the perfect time just to recharge for fall camp. And what do you know? 3 coaches exit for the NFL. I mean, that was the worst time to take a vacation, but that's life in the SEC.
And it looks like Florida's shoring up the tight end spot, position. And we get to this point where, some guys are on breaks right now. Some coaches are. They take this final week. They want to dip off. They're going to spend time with the family because, from next week until July, they don't get a break. And I'm interested. That's one thing I wanted to ask you about when it comes to college football and where we are at right now. I had this conversation. I was talking with former Tennessee assistant T. Martin, talking with a couple other assistant coaches about this with the recruiting calendar. How much change, in your opinion, have we seen? Because I have my thoughts, but I want your thoughts on how much change we've seen when it comes to the recruiting calendar when you add in the transfer portal and you're adding NIL to the conversation. Like, Mike, like these jobs for these coaches have changed in the last 2 years. It's been more added to it. And yeah, they make money. They make good money in the Power 5 level, but job titles aren't the same anymore, brother.
No, and you're seeing it more and more. I mean, the NFL has always been an intriguing option for a lot of these coaches, but it was pretty stunning when a guy like Steve Spurrier made that jump to the NFL. Now, it seems like all these coaches, the first chance they get, it don't matter where it is or what the position is. Hey, I'm going to the NFL because I don't want to have to deal with all this other BS. Like you said, the recruiting, the NIL, the transfer portal, and not only having to deal with all that, but having to deal with all of that essentially in the same period. I mean, it's just incredibly wild. I think they really screwed up with this early high school signing period. It doesn't make any sense now. And now that we got the expanded college football playoff coming right around the corner, I mean, we are going to have what is essentially now the signing day, the national signing day, the week of the college football playoff. So how locked in can Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, and them be for recruiting when they will likely have a game in about 3 days to prepare for that is going to determine how successful their season is? I mean, something has to be done. It's hard for me to feel too bad, Trey, for some of these guys making $10, $11 million, but they're at the high bar. I mean, most of the assistants are doing all the work and they're not getting paid near as much. So yeah, I mean, we're just going to keep losing more and more quality coaches to other things because we're just putting too much on these guys.
Tennessee leading Ole Miss by 12 with 5:45 remaining second half. Outkick 360 rolls on across the Outkick network. Conference tournaments galore. Next week, we'll have the scores for you throughout the NCAA tournament. Can't wait.
It's going to be fun.
Selection Sunday.
One of my favorite times of the year. That first Thursday of the tournament.
Oh, yeah. And then the Masters is just around the corner.
Oh, yeah.
Chad will be mowing his lawn before then.
I talked to someone who's mowed their lawn twice already.
What?
Yes. I said, you must have really good fertilization plan. Like whoever's treating your yard is doing a really good job if you've mowed your yard twice already.
I have not seen any grass.
I've got grass. My backyard could use a mow probably this weekend. It won't be mowed this weekend. I'm going to hold out. But it could use
a mow.
It could use a mow.
To me, it's the NCAA tournament. It'll be around 70 degrees wherever you're listening, right? There's always that one 70-degree hit. And then the Masters hits and you're like, I got to get outside and do something. Got to break a sweat.
You do not want to get outside and do something other unless you're at a patio bar watching games during the NCAA tournament. But yeah, Masters, you want to get outside.
Yeah, but it's the time of year though. It feeds into the Masters.
I remember covering an NCAA tournament one year in Providence, and it was like 68 and sunny the first day of the tournament. Yeah. And it was like 24 the day before. And I'm thinking, this is divine providence in Providence. That the first day of the tournament, it feels like spring. It was amazing.
So, Ja Morant, the gun incident most recently, reportedly came after the Grizzlies held a players-only meeting about showing better discipline on the road. And since then, Chad, Colorado police say no charges for Ja Morant. And they also extended the hiatus. I don't know if they're calling it a suspension. The hiatus to 4 games, not 2. But the message.
What is the hiatus? Like I don't.
Well, that's my term. I don't know what they're calling it.
But it's just so stupid.
Personal time.
But the Grizzlies announced that it's going to be 4 games. But I thought it was John Morant saying I'm stepping away from the team for a couple games. So shouldn't he be announcing that?
Yeah.
This is all so dumb.
Yeah, I agree. So he's now going to miss the Grizzlies game against the Warriors Thursday today, and he's got the Mavs on Saturday he'll miss. Also at Dallas on Monday, and then the Heat on March 15th. NBA rules prohibit a player from possessing a firearm while on team property or traveling on team business. So that would violate NBA rules.
I feel like the authorities just didn't want to mess with it because I don't know a place in America that serves alcohol like a strip club,
right,
where you could bring a weapon in.
But it's not clear if he was intoxicated or drinking. And Colorado,
I'm telling you, when they sell it,
right,
place where they sell. This is not Tombstone. You don't walk into the saloon, loaded for bear.
Right.
When you're in, I think the rule.
And Chad, this is not you or I. This is John Morant.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, that's.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't. I feel like that's a thing. Like you can't bring guns into bars.
I mean,
am I making up laws left and right here?
I think I would.
I'm really showing my lack of a
Colorado
legal degree.
Is an open carry state.
Davey went to law school. Does Davey know this? This is one we could ask Davey.
You can't carry a firearm in Colorado on federal property.
I do know you can't. I mean, you're not going to be able to drink alcohol and carry a firearm. Like that's just like pretty much blanket rule across the country.
But isn't it a blanket rule that also if you're selling alcohol somewhere, you just can't bring it in?
No,
for
you
that
can
very
legally. You can have an open carry. You just can't consume alcohol.
I wonder
Hutton
if
is correct on that.
I wonder if John Morant has the carry permit.
I don't know.
That'd be the next piece of.
I don't have the answer, but
you're not allowed based on NBA rules to carry. Period.
Yeah.
On NBA business.
Well, it said NBA property, so I guess any road trip
on the road for
Gotcha.
NBA business.
Gotcha.
Team business, which would be NBA.
But
business.
he's not suspended. Once again, though,
they have not used that word to my knowledge. It's been his choice
soft.
to step away for personal time. Work on learning better methods of dealing with stress and my overall well-being is the quote.
So the first part of this story, Hutton, that you brought up, the team-only meeting, and then this happens immediately after. This shows me that John Morant, while he is a great talent, is a terrible teammate. Steven Adams, by all reports, is one of the more vocal ones that called this meeting about their road record is terrible and how to conduct themselves better on the road to be more professional and, win some more games on the road and not be so bad. Message not delivered with John Morant. So I see that, and I think he's not a leader. And not only that, he's not a very good teammate if that's a decision that he made. Now, he can come back from that. He can go hat in hand and apologize to the team and say, I've been going through some stuff. This is all on me. I'll be better. And things will be fine. Because ultimately, what do we forgive in sports? Great players. So he's a great player. So he's going to, play great, I'm sure, for the Grizzlies. But, man, this is just a terrible look all around.
Yeah.
With this latest report.
Well, and my overall point with this is we can see this snowballing, right?
Yeah.
The snowball effect. Bigger and bigger. I feel like I'm watching the demise of John Morant in front of my own eyes. And I don't like that. And I think
it's like we're watching the VH1 Behind the Music, but the John Morant edition.
It feels that way.
In real time.
Yeah. And it's just a weird feeling I get based on the incidents that have now compiled. Even if he's not specifically involved in them, someone from his group allegedly has been, right? And so I automatically look to, like, we're seeing one of the more talented basketball players on the globe. And the downfall, not the rise, not the ascension of one of the superstars. And he's right there. And that's what I hate. And I wish the league would do more to step in.
And it has gone from he needs to run with a better crowd and maybe distance himself from some of the
and sometimes you
entourage
can't
around
help
him.
sometimes you can't help the player. I just don't see much help being offered.
No,
here.
and also like you can't pick your dad. I understand his dad's part of his group around him, right? But to me it's shifted from he needs to get better friends or surround himself with different people to this is on John Morant. He's a part of this.
Right.
He's an active part. This is not just he's not just being drugged down. He's dragging people down.
But if there's no repercussions of whatever's going on along this timeline, then what difference does it make what he's doing?
Oh, yeah, let's not use the word suspend. Well, he is not suspended.
Yeah.
There is no suspension.
That'll be
we support him.
It'll be banned by Disney soon,
John Morant.
whenever we see him take over as CEO.
Adam Silver takes over as CEO, and his first step as Disney is to
you cannot use the word suspend. We suspend the word suspend.
He suspends John Morant as CEO of Disney, but he doesn't use the word suspend. He's going to do what John Ruiz did and have a new definition, of the word suspend. He's going to come up with a new word to describe that. That's less.
It's now 4 games.
It's not as abrasive. This word's not as suspend is triggering for many, Hutton. So we need to come up with a different word that's not going to trigger too many people when we say suspend. That's Adam Silver's next task.
Tennessee's up by 12 with 3:15 remaining in the second half against Ole Miss. We'll keep you updated on that score. We do know Mississippi State has advanced over Florida. They'll take on Alabama tomorrow. Chad, did you see the video of Sean Kemp?
Yes.
Allegedly, it's Sean Kemp on video. I presume it to be Sean Kemp on video. He's in a parking lot. It's called a drive-by shooting because he did fire the weapon, allegedly. Felony drive-by shooting. He was booked, but he's since been released within the last hour or so. No charges. This is from Tacoma, Washington, from former Supersonic star Sean Kemp. No charges are immediately being filed against former NBA star Sean Kemp following his arrest in a drive-by shooting in Washington. He's 53 years old. It's hard to believe.
I know.
Booked for investigation of felony drive-by shooting shortly before 6 p.m. Wednesday, in Tacoma. And no one was injured in the shooting Wednesday afternoon. The video that I saw from, I believe it was TMZ that had it, you can hear one shot. He claims he was fired on first, and there were multiple shots fired. And there are witnesses who say they heard multiple shots. I should also mention that. There are witnesses on the scene that say they heard multiple gunshots. All you can hear on the video is Kemp, and I'm assuming it's Kemp. Again, I presume it's him, fire a weapon in a parking lot. But he's been released, and there are no charges currently headed his way. Crazy story. And I didn't know what Sean Kemp was up to until this headline. I needed to know, where are they now, speaking of VH1?
Rain Man. Well, the Rain Man edition of Where Are They Now? So back-to-back stories where we got a guy flashing a gun in a strip club in a video. 0 charges. Nothing to see here. Nothing wrong with that. We have it on video, but no charges. And just shots being fired and no charges.
Right.
Witnesses, people hearing it, video of it. I mean, are we in the Wild Wild West? Is this actually Tombstone? Is it Tacoma, Washington? Is this
Tacoma?
Is this Dodge City
Tacoma
now with their rules? I mean, odd that no one's being charged anything.
I didn't know that if you
but
just
again,
walk in a parking lot, it's
I'm being forced to dive
a
into the legal matters I don't know about. I just felt like, firing at people in public could be a crime. I guess I was wrong.
Yeah. Altercation between 2 vehicles. Someone gets out of their car. Shot is fired. No charges here. Gilbert Arenas, speaking of gun charges. Gilbert Arenas. Chad, I know you've got the story on some conversation that he had about Ford signatures, and Richard Jefferson has some thoughts too. But did you see where he was saying that he was comparing this era or his era to the 80s NBA league? And he was talking about how he had a bag of Coke that fell out of his sock while playing an NBA game.
Arenas did?
Yes. And there were people on the bench that were drinking beer out of a water bottle, the area he was comparing to.
Yeah.
He was like, if you really want to go back to the days where no one tested anything, I'm paraphrasing, no one tested anything, or, how quote-unquote hard the game was then compared to now. He was referencing what guys were doing on the bench compared to what guys were doing in-game and getting away with at the time.
I mean, there are crazy stories from the 70s.
Oh, I know.
Even the Last Dance, Jordan talking about the team he was a rookie on where, road trips are different probably than they are, in the modern NBA, and a life that he did not realize existed, and just what was going on with his teammates. Different time for sure. But even the Ron Artest, stories of when he was at his worst, he's drinking like a fifth of rum.
Yeah.
or a pint of rum at halftime of Bulls games when he was playing with the Bulls. Just crazy stuff.
Yeah, he was saying, so Arenas was saying, like, hey, you've got the 14th guy on the bench, the 11th guy on the bench who knows he's not playing, drinking out of the water bottle. He's like, you think he's thirsty? You think he's hydrating? No.
It's just crazy to me that you would make money as a pro athlete
and get away with it, though.
But like, if you're the
night after night,
you're the 12th guy on the bench. Like, your game ends at 9:30. Like, just go out, right?
I mean,
like, why are you drinking on the? Just wait till you go out that night.
I think it just shows what they're, they were hard up for. And it was Arenas that said he would roll it up in his sock, not like going to the club. He would have like illicit drugs in his sock on the court playing.
Why? Was he using it during the game?
I don't know if he was using it during the game. I don't think he trusted to leave it anywhere.
Oh, I got you.
So he had it rolled up in his sock. And at one point...
What does that say about his teammates? That he couldn't even leave it in the locker room? I don't know what managers are going back there and doing when we're out there playing.
Yeah, at one point it fell out during the game.
I got to hold on me. I got to keep it on my person the whole time.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Hit us up at Outkick 360. Chad, what are your Vols up to? You feel good right now?
Yeah, Tennessee leads 68-55, 12.5-point line, by the way. Vegas is always very close. They're up 13 with 50 seconds left in the game. So Tennessee's going to win. They will advance to take on Missouri tomorrow in this later afternoon game at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville at the SEC tournament. And if you took Tennessee covering the 12.5, well, it was after the shot clock. So they hit a 3, but it was after the shot clock.
Chad, we earlier this week, we're about to hear from Charles Barkley on Kendrick Perkins, but recap for us Kendrick Perkins on First Take, because you stumbled upon this randomly.
Turned on the TV, rarely watch First Take, but turned it on, and I turned on just in time to see J.J. Redick starting with all due respect to your show, Stephen A., and to this network, and I'm thinking, okay, this could be good.
You turned it up.
Yeah, immediately I was on mute, and I turned it up. But when he said that, I'm like, all right, this is going to be good. And he just goes all in on Kendrick Perkins. And Kendrick Perkins insinuated that Nikola Jokic is basically winning MVPs because he's white and because white voters vote in guys that shouldn't win because they're white, right? Implying racism. So J.J. Redick says, you putting false narratives out there like that that's not based in reality is a problem because people believe what you say. They then believe what you're saying.
Right.
And they went back and forth. Kendrick Perkins had no good response other than to kind of duck away from his comment and say, I didn't say that. I didn't say that, which he did.
He insinuated.
It was really dumb. I mean, I said it the day that it happened. People are all pointing to different tweets that he sent that show that Kendrick Perkins is racist. They keep showing me these things. I don't know that he's racist. I don't like to just throw out racism to anyone without knowing them, right? So I'm not going to say he's racist. What I can say is that he's just not smart. And that's what we heard with that argument, and we especially heard it when he was somewhat trying to debate J.J. Redick on this point.
So Charles Barkley was asked about this, about Perkins' assessment of Jokic. And he says, that's asinine and silly. Asinine, silly, and stupid. Pick one of the words, whatever you want. I always talk about ESPN disease. A lot of these guys, when they get on TV and stuff, they're like, well, I'm on ESPN, I got to say something provocative. And you know the thing about it, you're always going to get some fools out there. Some guys probably get some fools calling and agreeing with them. I can promise you this. I've never said anything on television just to get clicks. That don't mean I've been right or wrong, whatever. That from Charles Barkley. Barkley is one of the few, Chad, that can speak his mind. And unlike, we can use Perkins for an example. Unlike Perkins, it doesn't come across as scripted, as set up, or as the environment for which he works, right?
Yeah.
Barkley is uncensored, and it doesn't matter if you're black, white, if you're playing in the NBA, if you're playing in a pickup game. He's going to give you his honest opinion and assessment of what he sees or what he hears. And in this case, he's dead on right. Live tour with Clay last year, or in this regard?
People like Barkley because they believe him. They don't always agree with him, but they believe that he honestly believes what he's saying.
Right.
And he does it in an entertaining way.
You believe that what you're getting is authentic.
Yeah, that's Barkley.
And Do you think it was authentic what we heard from Perkins, or was it just
no? It's authentically dumb,
but authentically on brand with ESPN.
It's authentically on brand. I do not believe
JJ Redick was off brand.
JJ
with his
Redick
response
went rogue, and I applaud him because he spoke out against his own company a little bit in doing so. They had to apologize on behalf of Kendrick Perkins. Kendrick Perkins didn't apologize. Molly Karam did the next day.
Right. But
that's pointing out things that were not fact about NBA voters being white. So, no, I do not believe this is here's the ESPN culture problem. The ESPN culture problem is Kendrick Perkins doesn't think twice about calling white people racist because that's just not controversial to say there. I think it's a very damning accusation to make, to point at anyone, I don't care what race you are, and say they're racist. That's why I'm not going to be so quick to just say, well, Kendrick Perkins is just racist.
Right.
I don't know that. I've heard him enough to know that he's dumb. I think anyone that listens to him enough knows that. And that's why ESPN's having to come back and apologize for what he's saying about MVP voting. So the ESPN problem is Kendrick Perkins and others can quickly call anything racist and they don't think twice about it, whereas they should think twice about calling everything racist. The problem with this argument is it's Kendrick Perkins on his own making a very dumb argument that's not based at all in fact. And he's insinuating racism. And where J.J. Redick has the smart counterpoint is you are bringing something in that's just not reality in the voting process when we're looking at this. And I applaud Redick for saying that because it's true.
Coming up, we'll give you a scoreboard update, some games going final in conference tournaments. Plus, there is a team in the NFL that had 13 wins a year ago that reportedly they're going to be losing some premier talent in the coming days. Details next on Outkick 360.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, whoa, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey.
Come on, live a little.
Welcome into Outkick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
So the higher that number can be, the better you are with the committee. It's really that simple.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
He's got incredible taste in which media figures he listens to.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
Why are we going through Melania's goods? Don't make Brittany Griner out to be some type freedom fighter. Shouldn't there be a little bit of common sense? Let's roll them, big boy. What do you got?
They want to find someone to be the face of domestic terrorism, and they want it to be a right-wing Trump supporter. Don't let them entrap you into doing something dumb. But they were hyper-rational. They looked at the data, and they said it makes no sense for me to submit to this COVID shot mandate.
Get the shot or you can't go to your brother's wedding. Get the shot or you can't go to your daughter's graduation. Get the shot or else.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, the bold taste of a Southern legend.
From 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us. Wrapping up the Thursday edition. Hutton and Withrow with you. Follow us on social at Outkick 360.
Fun show today.
Yeah, and we've got some finals from around some conference tournaments. Tennessee and Ole Miss just went final with more. Here's Davey Hudson.
Thanks, Hut. Yeah, you said Tennessee, Ole Miss. Tennessee does win that one 70-55. They'll advance to play Missouri. Going out to the Pac-12, UCLA, they were hanging on. They managed to pull away late. They beat Colorado 80-69. And then in the Big 12 game here, Kansas, West Virginia was giving them a run for their money, but Kansas ultimately walks away with the winner 78-61. Now, Coach Bill Self did not coach today. There was a release that he was feeling ill. Within the last 10 minutes, they put out another release saying that he will not coach for the remainder of the Big 12 tournament.
It's not good. We wish him the best for sure with Bill Self's status there, and hope he has a speedy recovery and that he's back for what could be a very long run in the NCAA tournament for Kansas. So wishing him the very best. West Virginia was one of those teams hanging around the bubble, so that would have been a huge win today over Kansas had that happen. And Tennessee, sort of a ho-hum 15-point win over Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Not a bad day at the office at all for the Vols. without Zakai Ziegler, they get a chance at some revenge tomorrow against a Missouri team that shot about 60% from three in Knoxville and won on a near half-court shot at the buzzer to win the game.
I do want to pick up on the Bill Self story because I'm reading between the lines here because the statement from Kansas isn't saying much, but it may be saying a lot because it's not saying much. I hope everything's okay with him. Scott Drew addressed Self's absence after the game. Here's his quote. "We are prayerful. Life is short. Winning the game of life is the most important thing." If a fellow coach is saying that, I don't take this to mean he has the flu.
Yeah.
Right?
It's worse than that.
It's troubling. I hope everything's okay with Self here because the university's not saying much, and I mean, you've got another Big 12 school saying more than the university has to this point.
I would hope that they come out and say more. Now that this game is over, I can understand in the lead up to a tournament game,
yeah,
you may not say everything. I hope now that they've advanced to tomorrow's action, maybe the university comes out and gives some more details about what's going on. Well, again, I'm hoping for the best for him.
And the fact that he's out for the tournament means it's not the flu. It's not, a respiratory issue where he's back in a day and a half.
When I saw that he was being looked after at University of Kansas Medical Center or whatever the hospital was, my mind immediately went to less sickness and more episode, like some sort of medical episode happened that would hospitalize him. So, again, hopefully Kansas gives some more detail tonight.
So, you have more, Davey?
I do. Apparently there was a report going around that he had a heart attack, but Kansas has said that is false.
That's good.
Okay.
Now we just wait to see what it is.
But they won't say what it. Okay.
Say what
Again,
it is.
it's all speculation. Again, I just mentioned what Scott Drew said simply because that's not the tone you send after a game if the guy's just unwell.
Yeah.
Right?
John Rothstein reporting right now, no surprise, Georgetown has parted ways with Patrick Ewing.
Who did you mention for Georgetown earlier this year? Was it Davey that mentioned this? To replace Patrick Ewing.
Did we talk about Mike Bray?
Was it? Oh, Mike Bray, that's it.
As a possibility?
Yep.
That could make sense. I mean, Colin may have mentioned that even.
Because he originally
that would
announced the
make some
retirement.
sense.
He was going to retire. Now he's not officially done with hoops.
That would be, kind of a Rick Barnes to Tennessee-like hire for Georgetown, right? If he's not done coaching, that could be a steadying force for that program.
Ewing just goes back to the NBA, doesn't he?
I would think so. Man,
I'm really surprised that didn't work.
What a bad tenure. I mean, that was awful.
Yeah.
What his tenure there in D.C. Crazy that it was that bad.
So the Vikings, 13 wins last year, Chad. Reports are Adam Thielen is close to being cut.
Clay just walked in. Are you drinking orange soda?
Yeah,
is
Clay
that
Travis
Fanta?
just walked in the studio.
That's an interesting
from the Tennessee
choice.
Game.
No, that was amazing.
We've got 2 minutes left.
We got 1 minute left. Can we just talk about your choice of orange soda? I just thought that was interesting. You walking in with that.
Adam Thielen, Zadarius Smith is asking for his release. Adam Thielen could be cut, and then they're already going to part ways with Eric Kendricks. Clay Travis joins us for the final 60 seconds or so of the show.
I do my best work a minute at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. Same. Definition
all
right
the
there.
Best do, Clay. All the best do.
How was it over at Bridgestone?
It's a good vibe. I think it's going to be pretty electric with Mizzou going up against Tennessee. Whoever wins this Auburn-Arkansas game tonight. And then you got Alabama, you got Kentucky, you got
Auburn, Arkansas could be awesome.
Good, should be a really good game tonight. And you look at those 8 teams that'll be playing tomorrow, should be pretty electric. I'll be on a flight, however, headed to Italy. So I will be one of those situations where I don't think I'll have any Wi-Fi, so I'll land and see whether I won or lost money to start off the vacation.
Where do you fly into in Italy?
Florence. I've never been to Italy at all. We're going to Florence, Rome, and Naples. So I'm pretty pumped about it.
I think that's the right course.
I mean, look, we got a travel agent who set it all up.
Yep.
But
I love how Hutton asked it like you go every month. Where do you fly in when you go to Italy? Like guys that go to Italy monthly.
Normally it's Venice or Florence. Because you either fly into Venice for 2 days, 3 days in Florence, 4 days in Rome. That's the typical.
He's right.
Travel
I
agent.
don't know how he knows all this, but that's 100% what they typically do on a trip to Italy. So that's exactly what we're doing.
Well done.
the whole family going. So, we'll see how it goes.
Do you follow sports on a trip to Italy?
Well, I will because it's going on during the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, that's true.
But I'll be 6 hours ahead or whatever, so I'll probably be waking up early in the morning to see who won all the late night games, and then trying to see if I can get a VPN to, illegally stream games over there, which I don't imagine it's that easy to find in Italian bistros or whatever the NCAA tournament.
If you can read the menu, it's not authentic on the outside of the door, and when you see
how does Hutton know so much about Italy?
Well, I bet. When you go in, there will be guys who come and try to sell you a rose at the table.
Yeah.
They're head counting because they're part of the mob and they need their cut of the taxes. They're going to charge the restaurant
Tomorrow's
based on
show
what they report.
will be all Italian facts, start to finish. That's all we're talking about.
Look, here's what I'm trying to do. Not trend at any point during the trip.
This is Outkick 360. See you tomorrow.